Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Break the Rules. I am Lev Polyakov, and I am here today with Brian O'Shea, Gnostic Informant, and we are here to talk about the Red-Green Alliance that's currently going on. And I don't know, as far as what exactly awaits us in the days to come with the war in Iran, and what exactly is going to be happening in relation to that in the United States. We want to go very deep inside of it and find out exactly who all the players are, how high does it go up the food chain, as well as relate back to historical situations, relating back to the rise of Islam back in the Middle Ages with the know-how from Gnostic Informant. And for everybody who's watching, make sure to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the bell, and let's get started. And I first want to get started with Brian, good friend of mine. I've known him for years. He's a former U.S. Special Forces Intel. He runs Intel. He runs consumerdiligence.org, and also an analyst at banthebrotherhood.org, which is very much related to what we're going to be talking about today. And also brianocshea.substack.com. Highly recommend you guys check that out. So, Brian, you've been following this issue for a very long time. Now that Mamdani's in New York City as mayor, the attention is being paid that much more to this situation. And as we've seen with the horrible attempted attack with the IEDs of these two terrorists and the reaction Mamdani's had from that, what is the feeling that you have towards this overall situation? Then we're going to go more into the nitty-gritty of who the people are behind the scenes and how all of this is done.
Well, that's a tall that you baked a lot into that cake. So let me take it a slice at a time. Let's start with the attack on Jake Lang, the pro-America, some people call him far right protester. Let's start with those kids. I mean, that's what they looked like to me. Who threw the nail bomb? And that's what it was. And so for those who are unaware of it, there was an attack up at Gracie Mansion, which is where Mayor Mamdani, we all have trouble with his name, lives. And Jake Lang showed up with his protesters, and they've been going all over. And Jake Lang's a former J6er. I actually had him on my show a couple of times while he was in jail. And he got out, and he's been, I mean... He's got a style. I'll put it that way. I mean, I don't agree with some of his racist comments, or the use of the N-word. But I know where he's coming from, and he made a good point too. He said, "I do a lot of that because I'm messing with the algorithm. That always trends." And so, anyways, he's having his protest, and they first showed up in a U-Haul with a halal goat. That they picture that they
now that was horrible. That was horrible because it's cruelty to animals. They were
actually, according to Jake Lang. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
He was on Laura Loomer last night, and even she was trying not to laugh. And he had said he had actually bought it from a halal little butcher, and you've seen those all throughout New York. And they just stuff those animals into these tiny rooms right in the city, and then grab the one you want and butcher it. It's horrible conditions. They actually paid $700, so they technically did an animal rescue. And then after the protest, they brought the goat to a goat sanctuary. So,
all right, I guess the goat endured a little bit of discomfort because it was kind of being slapped around or something, or it looked like it was agitated during that particular protest, which I do not support doing to the poor goat. But I am happy that afterwards it went into the sanctuary. But still, just doing that to me is not really a mark of somebody who's a civilized human being. You know what I mean? Like, leave the poor goat alone.
I hear you. And, that's I don't like bringing live animals or children to protests. And as we know, a lot of the left drag their toddlers out to these things that turn violent. But like I said, he's getting attention, and that's what he wants. And, he's getting attention and drawing attention to his focus, which is, kind of like the attack on the white Christian male. So whether you agree with those politics or not is beside the point. The point is, as you said earlier, they're out there. The left shows up with 100 protesters versus his 12. He was doing a sorry, he was doing a. He just cracks me up. He was doing a pig roast in front of the mansion to protest Islam.
Wow.
You see what I mean? It's like yeah. So
no, that's the point of protesting, though. Is you're supposed to try to be as provocative as possible, right? I mean, isn't that the goal? Isn't that what you're supposed to try to do?
It's and the thing is, you think he's kind of like a Jerry Springer, kind of guy, but he was on my show, and when he did a conversion, and I really think he's a true believer in his
converted on your show.
No, not on my show, but he did one that'd be something.
I thought you said he went on my show and did a conversion. That's what it sounded like you said.
His soul would be better off he did it on my wife's show, but
And by the way, Neal, your audio is too low.
Yeah,
you got to do something there. But
better?
anyway, Brian,
It should be better.
Yeah, so he convert. The first time he came on, he wasn't converted. The second time he came on, he was converted. And I've been watching him; he's been pretty consistent with that. But anyways, that's beside the point. They show up.
Wasn't he recently in trouble for some text messages between some girl or something?
Jake Lang?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't follow him really that closely. I'd love to get him on again.
Someone was showing me something that was like some girl. It was like there was a groypers trying to get him in trouble, and they were pretending to be a girl who looked older, and they were texting him and going, "Oh, I want to hang out this weekend." And then as soon as he said, "Yeah, let's hang out," she's like, "Oh, I'm 15, by the way." And then as soon as she said she was 15, he was like, "I can't talk to you anymore." And then they were like, "Look, he's talking to a 15-year-old." It was like a setup.
Yeah.
So I don't
Usually
know.
that should work the other way around, right? Like the girl pretends to be young, and then as far as the stings usually go.
They were definitely trying to set him up. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, because that's a really good tactic. Because we all have intimate conversations with, numbers we don't recognize that send us those messages that say, "Hey, man."
Yeah. Can happen.
Want
And Neal, by the way, it's still too low. It's still too low. Just do something to.
I got mine up pretty high now, so it's like in my.
Do you want to adjust his volume on your end?
I did the best that I could. I did the best that I could adjusting it, but I think it's good. I think it's definitely good enough. But anyway, Brian.
So they show up. The counter protests show up. I'm guessing it was the people affiliated with either the People's Popular PSL. I'm just having a brain freeze.
The Chinese front, right?
Well, that's the people. So there's the People's Forum, which is an actual physical place, and that's in Midtown, and that is like an incubator. Okay, so kind of like they used to have something called Civic Hall. I don't know if you remember that place. And for like small liberal businesses. Well, this is like for small liberal terrorist groups, funded. And Roy Singham, the husband of
Roy Neville Singham, yeah.
Neville, thank you. Roy Neville Singham, who is the husband of Jody Evans, who founded Code Pink. And he's also sharing office space with Xinhua in Beijing, right now. That's the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda ministry. And he's been accused of kind of funding a lot of these violent protests around the country, anti-ICE, all that stuff. So anyways, I digress. But there's the People's Socialist, whatever. They're kind of like the more violent arm that showed up at the anti-ICE. And then they're usually accompanied by DSA, which is Democratic Socialists of America, who are they're the group that helped raise money and influence to get Mamdani into Gracie Mansion, into the mayor's office. And the way they did that, their capital is getting people out on the street. So that's why they're able to get these protests out so quickly. It's all planned. I myself am a member of the DSA under pseudonym. I like puppies, and I'm a renter. And what else? Oh, and I use the pronouns he, him. No one would talk to me until I put my pronouns up with my fake name. But yes, and they excel at really just getting people out on the street really quickly, which is easy to do in New York. And those look like the people that showed up. I recognize a few of them from the videos. Well, then these two yahoos come along. These two rich kids from Connecticut, who I know, Lev, you've done some research on. And they have these grapefruit-sized nail bombs. You can see they had the
Wait, not
What?
Connecticut. One's from Pennsylvania, and I believe the other one's from New
Pennsylvania.
Jersey.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was
No
associating
worries.
Rich Kid, Connecticut, hedge funds, but they had like the way you'd make one if you downloaded the plans from the Anarchist Cookbook or almost any website, and the fuse amazingly did not go off. It stopped halfway through, which then Jake was saying it's a miracle, and I'm not in a position to argue. That's pretty weird because that was an industrial fuse. They don't normally go off. They don't normally stop fusing. And then the police tackled one guy, and did they get the other guy? They shoot the other guy, Levy, or
No, they're both alive, I
they both
believe.
got arrested.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think the takeaway, let me land this plane because I'm rambling on, but
No, you're good, man. Take your time.
what this shows me is in my research, I don't see a direct connection to Iran per se. But what I do see is, and this goes back to ban the Brotherhood, which I'm an analyst on. We're trying to stop Sharia law in Texas and to actually ban the Muslim Brotherhood from being in this country and trying to get CARE designated, which is the Council on Arab and Islamic Relations, trying to get them labeled as a domestic and an international terrorist group because they're behind a lot of the organization. What I see this as a result of is two things. Radical Leninist leanings in our education system, which was infiltrated through many things, but really it was refined idea from Gramsci, from Italy back in the Comintern days, to infect our education systems with this propaganda. I say Leninist because there's a more violent, action-oriented feel to it. And then also there's something that is being waged against America right now, and that is called cultural jihad. Okay, so what cultural jihad is, and this is one of the hallmarks of the Muslim Brotherhood, that is doing the same thing that Gramsci of the Italian communists was preaching. Get into the system, get into the politics, get into the institutions. And I'm seeing a lot of that here. And with these kids, I'm also seeing a lot of impunity with the left. People like these kids or these young adults, because they sat there with no masks, lighting a big black. I mean, it literally looks like those bombs from the old cartoons, the big round,
Yeah.
black shiny ones. That's what it looked like. And you see the cops, they're like, whoa, hey, like, what the hell? And they're lighting sparklers. They're like, hey, man, here, put your hand there, block the wind, man. It's like they're lighting a cigarette. And then they throw it, and it didn't go off. And I think the worst, so the impunity comes from that a lot of these protesters never got arrested under Biden. They were able to do horrible things. They were able to light cities on fire, and they never got arrested. And if they did, they were bailed out. And I think that's where that sense of impunity comes from. I think they're having a wake-up call. But and you could hear it. You could hear a lady in the videos yelling, do you have your contact info? Do you have your contact info? Because they're all instructed to write down. They have a number that leads to a bunch of lawyers that will bail them out. He didn't sound like he knew what she was talking about. So they could be from an even more violent faction, not affiliated with directly with the main DSA or PSL or even Indivisible. So, but that's what I saw. But that's what I'm seeing here. That's the danger of it, is the radicalization of Americans into violence. We saw this after 9/11. We've seen this in our prisons, one of the main fertile grounds for recruiting people into Islamism, which is a lot more, it's like a radical, violent, fascist type of Islam.
It's the bad cop to Islam's good cop.
Yeah, it's like the KKK to Christianity.
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit different than that, but sure, let's go for that for now.
It's okay. Yeah. You probably have something a lot more refined than I do. Let's just say I think we can both agree it's really bad for America. And so, but the danger of that is, how do you stop that? You literally have to overhaul the whole system. You have to get out the old teachers. You got to eliminate the teachers unions. And I mean, I'm sorry. I think what they need to do in our education system is do what they did when I joined the army in the 90s, and that's interrogate you before you come in and check your body for tattoos to make sure you're not a member of some gang.
I don't know if Muslims have tattoos, though. I don't know if it's forbidden. I don't think it's forbidden. But what was interesting for me, as you know, I found the Facebook of the father, whose name is Ibraham Kayumi, of one of those two terrorists. And I looked through his friends list. One of the things that I found, other than many family members of his owning Popeyes franchises and also not paying their employees very much and having other, problems with the law and paying taxes and things of that nature, is that I found some that on their Facebook were actively praising Khomeini and Iran's IRGC government right now that the war's going on. And again, like the guy who I found in particular that I recall lives in Kabul, Afghanistan right now. So he's not a U.S. citizen, but he's just a friend of his dad. Yeah. But that makes me think, how much is that influence a decisive factor in these two guys becoming terrorists to begin with, where I doubt that they would have been radicalized in their school about that. Maybe they would have been radicalized about communism and that kind of thing. But if your relatives and friends of your family are actively sharing support for the IRGC right now, that tells me something. That tells me that there is probably an understanding among people that these two guys were close with of what they want the future to be like.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm going to push back a little on not getting radicalized in schools, because we saw what happened at NYU. We saw what happened at Columbia. I mean, they took 2 janitors hostage and had violent protests up there, and that was coming right out of curriculum. And one of the most radical teachers there, believe it or not, at Columbia, is Mamdani's father, who I have video of him saying, you got to do kind of violent stuff sometime. I mean, so it's very much, but I hear what you're saying too. The more core belief of it definitely comes through family and culture coming back from Afghanistan and a lot of parts of the Middle East. And it's interesting that you said that, because it's very, very intuitive of you, because when I was working counterterrorism and, for different agencies that, I would sometimes have access to, oftentimes have access to captured hard drives and computers. And radical Islam during the War on Terror, I worked it till about 2012 from 2000 and over in DC. And it's amazing because when you read, the archives of people's chats, whatever they were on their computers that were captured, over there in a lot of these countries, even the first world or more cosmopolitan type societies, dudes were on there, like high school age dudes were on their chats, picking up women using jihadi lingo. And by that I mean, like, I kid you not.
It works?
It works, and that was, I can't really go into the details of what we did about it, but the trick is like they were the cool guys. It's kind of like the same effect. Yeah, it's like this is very, very similar to what we see with gang culture.
Yeah. I was just thinking that in my head right now. Yeah.
And so, people who are
bad
not
boys, the bad boys.
Exactly. So people who are not really that experienced in the Middle East, I think, especially Americans, and Europeans, they have this image of these jihadis. A lot of people do, and a lot of people who are against Islam, they have this image of Arabs like Lawrence of Arabia, like everyone's spiritual and everyone's believers. I mean, I know a lot about Islam from my language studies, but most of these people don't know a thing about Islam, and then they're taught by some dude who, recruited them into a social club that became a bowling club that eventually became, hey, yeah, you put on the spawn vest, but. That's their, like, a lot of them think there's 7 pillars of Islam, and and violent jihad is one of them, and so they're ignorant to the very thing but they're not really fighting for that. That's the thing. A lot of them are recruited in because they want to belong to something bigger than themselves, Okay, just the same way gangs get people. For a lot of people, they don't see any other way out, just like the hood. And before they know it, you're in so deep that next thing you know, you're doing suicide bombs. Now, this didn't happen with these kids. This is a lighter version. I mean, there were kids their age were a lot more hardcore in between 2003 and 2010, such as like the subway bombing in London. But the radicalization comes from home because Uncle Muhammad's coming home and he's like, yeah, and he's got money and he's got like lots of businesses and he's cool and he's in shape and he does MMA and they want to be like that. And except here in America. And then he also has a lot of influence on them, he being a fictitious character. So yeah, you're right. There's a core cultural, it's in the blood. And it's not, I just want to stress, it is not like, hey, someday you can be a terrorist. It's like, hey, man, let's go out fishing. Hey, man, Khalil, my buddy over there that bought this big boat, he has these meetings all the time, and they're pretty cool. It's like cooler version of like Quranic studies, and they just get sucked in this way. And
sure.
Then it's reinforced by a lot of our Ivy League and mid-level universities.
No, you're right. That does fan a lot of the flames.
Yeah.
And I want to get to Neal on this as well,
Please.
as far as if we go back in time to the probably worst time to be alive, as Neal, you were talking about, when Islam started up. Would those people be in a similar position as those young people, like following the leader over here? Like, as best as you know, Neal, studying that particular time, what was life like? And if you can imagine yourself being in the shoes of one of these young guys that are looking up to the Prophet Muhammad and Abu Bakr and Omar and all those gats, like, what exactly would that have been like?
And Eric, I hate to interrupt, but a lot of
Lev.
my audience is watching.
Lev,
and
not Eric. Not Eric. It's Lev. This is
I'm
like
never-
the 10th time.
This is the weirdest thing, man. But
And by the way, everybody smash that subscribe button right now and smash the like button, click the bell. And
I was
also-
actually looking for the
Type
link
Eric
and
in
I
the
was searching
comments.
for Eric in my email.
Type Eric in the comments to get a boost.
You have a
on the video.
doppelganger. His doppelganger was a good friend of mine years ago. It's so weird. But anyways, Lev, my audience may not know Gnostic's background, and I think he has a very interesting background, very interesting field of study, and
Oh,
a
yeah,
great
absolutely.
show.
Yeah, so Neal, give us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know that Brian, by the way, knows Arabic, and you know Hebrew and ancient Greek, and you
And
are
by the
one
way,
of the most
biblical Hebrew, not modern Hebrew. They're very
biblical
different.
Hebrew.
That's
Biblical
the one
Hebrew.
I'm more associated with.
Yeah, biblical Hebrew, ancient Greek, and one of the most studied men I know when it comes to ancient religion and philosophy and all that good stuff. But Neal, just give us a brief background for the audience who don't know about you, and then give your take on the Islam formation and all that during the darkest of the Dark Ages.
Yeah, I mean, my YouTube channel is based on studying ancient history, mythology, the Bible, the origins of religions, Roman religion, Greek religion, stuff like that. I like to make documentaries, but I also like to bring on experts and scholars and interview them about things they write and study and stuff like that, and try to put it all together and come up with different ideas on stuff like that. Islam is interesting because it goes through different phases. Obviously, it starts up in sort of a shadowy, like, origins. Like, there's different stories on where it came from, and is it related to Nestorian Christianity, which is like an Eastern Arabic Christianity that was outside of the sphere of Orthodoxy, Greek Orthodoxy. That's one of the options. There's also some pagan roots going on. So, for example, the Kaaba, the cube at Mecca, we can find ancient Arabic religion before Islam, where the black stone that fell from heaven that people are prostrating in front of is in the primary sources. And there's Christian authors in the 3rd and 4th century writing about Arabs prostrating in front of a black stone. This is way before Islam. It's before Muhammad even was on the planet. So it's a very, very fascinating origin story for Islam. But I think when we look at the 1st century of Islam, that's 7th century, it's obviously a warrior culture. Its goal is to spread and it successfully conquers most of the Eastern Roman Empire, being Jerusalem, Antioch, Syria. These are two major cities, major capital cities in the Eastern Roman Empire. Alexandria, Egypt, and then eventually going all the way to Spain in the West, and then making its way over the course of many centuries, obviously, all the way into Constantinople eventually. So it conquers, and its goal is to conquer. It's part of the culture of Islam, but there is a little bit of a golden age that kind of pops up in the 9th century, so the 800s.
Johnny would say the Iranian or the Persian golden age.
Yeah,
if we're talking about
sort of. That's definitely part of it. That's definitely a big part of it. I would say he's right. And the reason why he's right is because once Islam gains a lot of power and starts to settle down in these urban lifestyle, going from a desert lifestyle to an urban lifestyle.
Yeah, Baghdad and
and all of a sudden you have libraries and physicians and education, and what they start doing is, and this is through their Persian influence, is they learn how to do education, and they learn how to read, translate translate Latin and Greek. And what they do is they start reading Plato, they start reading Aristotle, they start reading the classics, and they start coming up with their own iterations, and it enhances their theology on Islam, and they start becoming more bookish, scholarly types. And they even start to reverse engineer some of these Greek cities, and they start building their own cities based on architecture knowledge that the West lost. So there's a time period where it looks like the Islamic East starts to get a little bit ahead of the Christian West for a little bit, and they kind of go like this for a while until recently, obviously.
And wasn't it also a reason for the Europeans deciding to try and colonize South America that they did not really want to deal with the Muslims in the Silk Road at that point?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, so it's very interesting how one created the other. But if we could rewind the clock even earlier to the average would be almost Brian. By the way, Brian, there is background noise that's going on in your webcam. I want to make sure that if there's something that's on in your room, that is taken care of. But anyway, here you go, Brian. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Is it still there?
I don't think it is. I think it's all right.
I was moving things around, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
I wanted a quick question, though.
Sure.
This is fascinating because even I don't know that gap, that historical gap that I think a lot of people don't. Silk Road and Islam, can you expand on that?
Well, I mean, you have the Silk Road that goes all the way through Afghanistan, all the way to China.
Right.
Which actually has its origins in the Hellenistic period, when Alexander even the Persians, they start laying down roads to these major cities.
They had, by the way, sorry to interrupt, the Persians had the first system of the Intercontinental Highway.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like going all the way back to Persia, they start laying down roads to these other empires and countries and nations and city-states, and Persia's like in the middle of the world, like in a way. But over time, these roads start getting connected to other roads, which are connected to other roads, and eventually you start getting what's known as the Silk Road. So there's debates on when exactly the Silk Road started. Some people will go back to the Persian Empire. Some people will say it starts in the medieval period. Some people will say depends on when you want to define the Silk Road, because it's not a thing that just started overnight. It's a development of different trading routes that lead into each other. So eventually Islam inherits this road that's been set up by empires for going back thousands of years, and they're in the middle of these trading routes, and that makes them very wealthy just by geography alone. They become super wealthy because all the trade from the west to the east has to go through the Persians. It has to go through the Arabs and the Persians, who are coexisting in the Middle East at the time, and eventually the Turks later on come through. But so we even have evidence that Julius Caesar was wearing silk in some, I forgot exactly what year it was, but he was in the Senate giving a speech, and he's described as wearing silk, which would be from China. And that's the only place it comes from. So that we know even back then, even in the 1st century BC, there was trading going through the Persians, through the Greeks to the Romans, even though the Romans had no idea who it'd be the Han Empire at the time. the Han Dynasty. They had no idea. There's no mention of the Han Dynasty ever in Roman sources. But through trading with their neighbors, who are the Greeks, who are neighboring the Persians, who are neighboring India, who are neighboring Tibet, and then China, you could see trading was making its way from west to east through these empires. So yes, the Silk Road is huge. It's a big deal because whoever controls the Silk Road is basically master of the world.
That is so interesting.
Even up until
never
modern
knew that.
times, once seafaring starts to become a big deal, and you start getting the global English empire, when like being able to go around major continents to trade with India was a huge deal, because now we no longer are dependent on Persia and Muslims anymore. So that's how big of a deal this trade route was. The West had to think of ways around it. You know what I mean? For the economy to be on our side.
And now we got the whole Belt and Road Initiative with China, but we can get that to that a little later. So I want to go back to this question of, if you were the average young guy who converted to Islam at around the time of Muhammad, you were saying earlier that was pretty much the worst time to be alive for a human being in recent history. Could you expand a little bit on why you think that is and what that life must have been like?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what period did you say?
Oh, well, when Islam came about, the Dark Ages.
Oh, I thought you said the best period. I was like,
no, the worst period. No.
Well, okay, so
Yeah.
during this time period, this is the 7th century. So right before this, Heraclius is the emperor, and he's pretty successful emperor. But we're talking about a time period that's still affected by the Justinian plague that happened in the 6th century. So in the 6th century, which is the 500s, during the reign of Justinian, there was this huge black plague that struck, and it wiped out like more than half of the population at the time period. And it was the effects from it were so bad that the economy and even birth rates were still affected all the way up until like probably the 9th or 10th century. So the 7th century is right in the middle of this dark age, they call it. And the reason why it's called the Dark Age is scholars will push back against the term Dark Ages for good reasons. In historiography, you don't want to use a subjective term. Like we have the Iron Age, we have the Bronze Age, we have the Copper Age, and those are objective terms based on they discovered copper, they discovered bronze, they discovered iron, world-changing things that changes everything. Whoever has iron in the Age of Iron can win wars better, can produce technology better, all types of stuff. Building methods are better. So we have Copper Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Classical period when philosophy starts to expand, Hellenistic period, Roman period, late antiquity, and then medieval period. They don't call it the Dark Ages because that's a very subjective term. What do you mean by dark?
It would be pretty funny though if they would call it like the dumbass age or the fuck you age or the shit age. You know?
Well, but here's the thing though. For every
wait, Brian, hold on. Oh, Brian, you were.
Why did they call it the Dark Age?
That's what I was going to say. So, okay, good question. I was just going to get into that. For every claim that's thrown out, for every misconception, if you want to, I don't think it's a misconception, but this is what the scholars will say. For every misconception out there, there's always some truth behind it. Well, the Dark Age was coined by the Renaissance writers like Petrarch, Machiavelli, some of these guys like Brumi, some of these Renaissance authors who were getting back to learning about the classic, learning about Plato, learning about Aristotle, learning about the laws of logic, learning about Homer and the playwriters and the comedy writers and the tragedy writers, and learning about antiquity and sort of bringing that stuff back into the fold. Well, they called it the Dark Ages because during that period, so roughly at the time of Theodosius, when he decreed that he made like paganism illegal, till roughly around the time of the Carolingian Renaissance, which is right around 800 AD, 9th century, when Charlemagne brings back the arts again for the first time in a long time after this Dark Age. So the reason why it's called the Dark Age is because there was a time period, and this is objectively true, and every scholar who studies medieval period will agree with me on this. During that time period, literature is dead. There's church texts being written like on the Trinity, Like there's texts about like what is the Trinity, or like how to find salvation. Like you're going to find a lot of philosophical church jargon texts, you know. But there's no epic plays. There's no Homer. There's no Aeschylus and Euripides and the Bacchae. If you compare the classical period to the early medieval period, there's just no comparison. So that's where they come up with the term Dark Age. Also combined with that, and by the way, during the time period between like 400 and 800, the historians and the library scribes lost 99% of all of the sources from before that. They lost it. They were only copying Christian sources. They were copying Homer. They were copying the tippy top of all the classics. So they kept Homer. They kept Plutarch. They kept Plato. Barely. We almost lost Plato. We only kept Plato in the East. The Latin West lost Homer. So if it wasn't for the Greek East, we would have lost Plato. The Latin West preserved Aristotle. What's that?
Were they destroyed? What was happening?
The papyri that we have it written on, over time, papyri starts to crumble and disintegrate after a couple centuries. So if you don't copy that papyri onto new papyri, you lose it. And and this is what they were doing. They were losing sources from antiquity because they only wanted to copy their church stuff. They were just copying Saint Dionysius, Saint Paul, Saint Athanasius, and so we have all the church doctrine. We have everything. There's a total light age for the church, total bright age for the Christian church, if you want to call it that. However, that's where the term Dark Ages come from. But it gets even worse once you factor in the plague that hits in the 500s that devastates the West for the next 3 centuries. Then now we really can look at this period and go, okay, this was really a dark age. So again, is it a subjective term? Yes. Is there objectively true statements about why this term is called the Dark Age? Yes. So Islam, interestingly, rises up in the middle of this period. In the middle of the darkest time in human history comes this religion that's all about conquering, and it's very simplistic. You can tell by reading the Quran what kind of period we're in, because there's no poetic, Homeric, deep allegory happening in the Quran. You're not going to find that in the Quran. It's just follow Allah or else. That's the Quran. Allah is most merciful, most gracious. If you don't follow Allah, hellfire for you. That's it. That's as deep as it goes. And like you read the New Testament, you can tell what kind of period the time was, because there's these deep allegorical passages that have to, the parables, the symbolism, the type
a lot of Hellenistic influence. You
could see the Roman Hellenistic influence. You could see what kind of time period we're in. You can get a feel. Whereas this is why the Quran is such a good indicator of how dark it got, in my opinion.
Can I ask a quick question? Because this is
sure.
I know that's not the topic of the show, but I'm fascinated.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Were you indicating in any way that there's a cause and effect? Was the lack of enlightenment, educate or like fine arts, whatever, did that help Islam spread?
Yes, I believe so. I believe the lack of classical education and the lack of preservation of the classical sources like Homer, like Hesiod, like Plato and Aristotle definitely led to people. Because here's the thing about no one wants to admit. People want to say Islam won because of the sword, and that's true to an extent. However, there were people in Carthage, in North Africa, in Syria, and in Judea who were looking like almost siding with the Islamic invaders against the Romans for whatever their political reasons were. We can go into, that's a whole nother debate right there. But the fact that you would see people like that in that time period who are like, oh, we have a new up and coming, this is going to be a new era where the Arabs are going to rule and the Romans are going to fall. This is great.
It's almost, by the way, sorry to cut you off. It sounds so much.
You're going to scoop me. I knew it.
Yeah, it sounds so much like the leftists today, and also the leftists in Iran in 1978, 79, where they were welcoming this change from the Shah, not realizing what kind of door they were opening up here.
Well, I would say
it's
even
exactly the fact. That's exactly
and the
correct.
connection to the wiping out of antiquity and all that is very similar to today. With no one reads anymore. No one knows history, except for you. And
I just know very little.
But you know what I mean? Like, you can ask. Probably, I could walk down the street here in Brooklyn and ask 9 out of 10 people. They might not know who Bach is.
Or even who Adolf Hitler is, unless they're like very online, know.
Right.
And then they'll only know who Hitler is and not know anybody else. But
And I wonder, I guess my last question for Neal is this an organic cycle of mankind, or is this latest stomping down of intuition and education that we've seen, definitely since the 1950s, where I see it starting? Is this intentional?
It's a good question, because it does seem like we can look at history and we can see dark ages definitely happening. For example, after the Bronze Age, the collapse of the Bronze Age, there was a dark age that after that. There was a couple hundred years where you don't find any new literature, and it's like we don't know what to think about this period. That's right. So from like a 1000 to 800 or 1000 to 700 BC, you could compare. They call it the Greek Dark Ages, but it's not just Greece. It's kind of all over the place in that time period. And so, is it a natural cycle that just happens over time? Do bubbles just burst? I think there's some truth to that, but I also think there are things that we can look at that lead to these kind of things. So, for example, we already mentioned the lack of preservation of ancient knowledge. When people start to get dogmatic about one particular thing, that could be one of the main drivers towards a bubble of a dark age.
Well, and that brings up a good point, because we see with a lot of the anti-Semitic tropes that are being thrown around, and especially now on the far right, what I call the anti-establishment right. These used to be those fringe people on Odyssey and Gab who were flat earthers, and we didn't land on the moon. Whether we did or not is beside the point. But and suddenly they're big, like they have huge audiences, which cannot be organic. I mean, just knowing the way social media works. But these are the same people who have really gained traction and momentum with anti-Semitic tropes, which blow my mind, because they're the same exact ones that were used by the church against the Jews, and then later on used by the Tsar against the Jews, and then later on used by Hitler against the Jews. And I put out a whole documentary on this, and then a conversation with Trevor Loudon. And it's not kind of like it. It's the exact same stuff. Like the Chronicles of the Elders of Zion, which was debunked, I think, in like 1920.
Protocols, yeah.
And I still, to this day, will have people on X quoting that to me. And I'm like, Jesus. And then I will also have people telling me, they actually put out that the Talmud was the center book of the religion of Judaism. I'm like, no,
the Torah.
It's the Torah.
On 4chan, there's this whole thing where they want to dare people who post to denounce the Talmud, so they know that they're down for real.
The very nature of the Talmud, which is discussions and a collection.
It's debating the Torah. You can't have a Talmud without the Torah. So they're the very nature of Judaism, and the way Jews interact, especially scholars, is to debunk each other. That's why they're always discussing and debating and arguing. I watched a bunch of Hasidic Jews from Brooklyn. We're on a plane together. We're all heading to Europe. I just happened to be sitting in the main cabin with all of them. And I was laughing, and I asked my seatmate, a young Orthodox Jew, I said, what are you guys debating up there? Because I kind of would like you to sit down, because it's kind of getting annoying when you have all these butts in your face. And he's like, well, with the curvature of the earth and the direction of the plane, we're debating, what time the sun goes down so we know when to start Shabbat. And I said, okay, fair enough, but there must be an app for that by now. I mean, surely. And but they debate everything. That's, that is their culture. That's
my wife's Jewish.
That's what's going on in the Talmud. It's a big debate.
I know my wife's Jewish. I mean, I can't get through one conversation without 15 questions, so I
Yeah.
get it.
There is
Yeah,
there's an interesting question here. What is the origin of that kind of debate? Is it building a kind of Socratic dialogue from first principles, or is it building something from Socratic dialogue, which ended up creating Judaism that we know today? Meaning, how much did the influence of Socrates, Plato, all of this debate that was going on at around the time, before the Maccabees, how much did that influence what Judaism became, as well as, after Maccabees during the Roman occupation of Israel, how much did all of that knowledge that was going around, the Essenes, etc., how much could we say that this is from all of these wise Greek men, what today we see when we're looking at these two rabbis that are arguing, versus it coming natively, if you will,
Well,
from the temple?
Well, it's both, because obviously they're not like just completely like dependent on surrounding cultures and the Greeks. They have their own native inspirations from their own native culture, but at the same time, they talk about this in the literature that you can find from Alexandria, for example, like Philo of Alexandria, Aristobulus of Alexandria. There's another guy named Ezekiel the Tragedian. There's a couple other authors from that time period who talk about how great Plato is and how great Socrates is and how great some of these Greek thinkers are. This is part of their tradition in a way, is to and this is you can see this cross cultural borrowing both ways. And in late antiquity, the Platonists, like Proclus, for example, says a lot of good things about the Jews, saying that these people are like philosophers in the heart, basically, saying something like that. Theophrastus, there's a fragment by Theophrastus who says something similar to that too. He's like, these are just philosopher men, basically describing them that way. So you can see they're kind of like sizing each other up and trying to one up each other. And who's the Talmud actually has a funny passage about a rabbi named Yeshua who goes to Athens, and he has this big sage off with the sages. It literally says the sages of Athens. They were trying to give him parables and what do you call it, riddles. And it says Rabbi Yeshua was able to figure them out easily, and they were dumbfounded by it. And they're like, then Rabbi Yeshua floated up into the sky and started levitating. And I'm like, it's like a legend, I guess. It's in the Talmud.
Yeah, I mean, that beats any argument. Yeah,
you can see the cultural borrowing back and forth in the literature. It's not like we have to like guess or like figure it out. You could see it. They're both admitting to this.
But do we see a similar thing with Islam when we're talking about its system of jurisprudence and all that?
It depends on when, because obviously early on with the Quran, it's very simple. There's not a lot of. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are parts of the Quran that does look like there is some. For example, there's a passage in the Quran in the chapter that's called El Kaf, which the cave. That means the cave, El Kaf. And there's two stories in this chapter, or surah, if you want to call it that. There's two stories in here. One of them is about 7 sleepers who go to sleep, and when they wake up, they go to sleep for 300 years, and they wake up, and it's an Islamic king, and everything's good. But when they went to sleep, it was under a pagan ruler, and they were being persecuted. So the miracle is they're being persecuted under a pagan. They go to sleep. Allah causes them to sleep for 300 years, and they wake up 300 years later, and they're in like paradise with the whole Islamic regime, and everything's fine. Well, it turns out that story is found in Christian Byzantine sources from the 400s. There's a story of Christians, 7 Christian saints who are living under a pagan emperor. So I think first century. I think they even named the emperor. I think it's Diocletian. Not Diocletian. It's no, it is Diocletian. Diocletian, and Diocletian was known for persecuting the Christians. And then when they wake up, 200 years have gone by, and sure enough, it's It's the Emperor Heraclius or something like that. It's one of the Christian emperors.
And even there, though, out of all the stories, what does this one teach you? What lesson can you glean from? It just seems more
It's
like
not
fan
much.
fiction.
It's just kind of it's just kind of a funny legend. There's another one too in
Yeah.
the same surah. And this is why we know that this particular surah must have came through the Syriac tradition, because the Syriac tradition was very highly in tune with the Greek tradition. So the Syriac gets translated from Greek to Syriac to Arabic. But anyways, there's one more story where a guy whose name is the two-horned one, Dul Karnain, and his name means the two-horned one. And the story says the two-horned one was traveling around the world and fighting against evil and conquering the bad people and saving the righteous who couldn't defend themselves, right? He was just kind of like a Superman, right? And then he goes all the way to the north where there's two mountains. And in between the two mountains is a big opening. And because of this opening, the barbarians, known as Gog and Magog, are able to get through. So what does he do? He prays to God. He prays to God, and the God erects a border between the two mountains, and Gog and Magog can no longer get into the civilized world. All right, that's a story that's in Greek. But that same story ends up in the Quran. Guess what story it is in Greek? It's the story of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, who, guess what? When you look at the coins of Alexander the Great that are circulating in Arabia and in Syria, guess what he has on his head? Let me show you right now. Let me show you right now. Alexander coin.
Yeah.
Watch
and
this.
everybody, here we go. Let me pull up the screen, and also patreon.com/break the rules, because I never miss a beat. Go there right now, become a patron. Here we go.
See it? He's the two-horned one.
Yeah.
Alexander.
Whoa.
So Alexander has two horns, and look at this. Here's a better. Here, let me share my screen one more time,
Holy
real quick.
moly, I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah, look at this. This is Alexander had two horns. In his ancient depictions, and he's even described in the book of Daniel as having horns. Anyways, the point is the story of the two-horned man in the Quran. This is in the Holy Quran, by the way. It's not hadith. It's not some side story. This is in the Holy Quran. Is a story about Alexander the Great praying to Allah, and Allah puts up an erected border, and instead of Gog and Magog, it's Goth and Magoth. The Goths.
Wait,
So-
and last one, which we got to say, you mentioned this one to me recently. I had no idea about it. One of the most popular passages for Muslims within the Quran. Well, you can go on ahead, Neal, about which passage that is and where that comes from.
The most
You were
famous passage in
mentioning,
the Quran.
yeah, you mentioned that there is a Quranic passage. When you ask a Muslim, what's your favorite passage from the Quran? And what they answer about
Allah is the most merciful, most
no,
gracious.
no, about like saving somebody. Like if you save a life.
I don't know what you're talking about. Are you sure I'm the one who said this?
I'm pretty sure it is.
This is so
it's-
disappointing because when his lights went blue, I was waiting for like smoke to come out, and he was going to say something really
Yeah,
profound.
I gotta fix my
I'm
lights
like,
on battery.
I'm like, what's he gonna? What is it? Come on.
Lev, what was your question again? I don't think I understand the question.
Neal, you blew yourself right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I definitely think it was you who mentioned that there is something that the Muslims took from the Talmud. A certain saying about saving like one life is like saving 1,000 lives, something of that nature.
Huh? No, that wasn't me that said that. But that's an interesting.
No?
That's an interesting. I never heard about that before.
Huh.
Hold on, I'll be right
Okay.
back. I didn't actually make the point that I wanted to make. It was
No?
the reason why I was telling those stories is because you were asking. We were talking about like what causes, like is it because the reason why we have the rise of Islam due to these dark ages? Is
Oh no,
because
it's a cause and effect thing. Like,
Yeah.
And I guess my point
is
was
the open field kind of like of knowledge, like the reason it was able to spread through ignorance.
yeah. And I think, and I guess the reason why I was bringing up those stories was, even though there is some obviously cultural borrowing, some influence from Greek mythology, for example, or even from Christians, the time period, when you look at the 7th century, it's really, really dull. I think some people say that Beowulf is an 8th century text, but outside of Beowulf, there's hardly any classic literature that you can point to. Like everyone knows about Homer's Iliad, everyone knows about like like the Aeneid or some of these famous some of these famous plays about.
Yeah, I mean the
Dionysus.
Odyssey, the Iliad, the
Yeah,
Aeneid.
and like we can go about classic literature. We can talk about we can give a list of 100 sources probably if we wanted to. But when we talk about that period between 500 and 800, Beowulf. What else we got? I can't think of anything else really.
Well, that's interesting. That if you have you been to the Middle East?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, these places are fun. They're very Western. Large parts of Syria and Jordan are the same thing. Lebanon kind of was. You go to Saudi Arabia, the heart of Islam, the center of it, and it's so boring. And you can't really just go as a tourist there. You need a business visa. But I was stuck there for like 3 weeks. And I'm in Riyadh, and I'm in the Four Seasons. I'm in like the best hotel in Riyadh. We got that sky bridge and all that. And I've never been so bored in my life because everything's censored. Oh, you've been over there?
This is how I felt when I traveled. Well, I went to Israel for like 3 weeks. Then I went to Jordan for a few days. And then I visited Petra. That's it. There's nothing else to do there.
Yeah.
And then I went to Egypt. I'll never go back to Egypt ever again.
Yeah.
I'm never going back there. I saw the pyramids. I went in the pyramids. I was into Djoser's pyramid. I went to Siwa. I did all the great sites. I did it. I don't think I'm going to go back there anytime soon.
I loved Morocco. Morocco was great.
Morocco sounds great. Yeah. But anyways, I agree with you.
So the point I'm making is I often wonder because Islam also banned imagery and icons.
Yes.
And so for people that don't know, that's why all the art that you see in Islam that looks all like woven stuff, it's just words. It's just letters. They're allowed to stretch and bend letters to kind of make imagery, but it's not imagery because it's words.
Yep. And they're allowed to paint like trees and like they can paint like fruit, but it can't be a person. Exactly. It can't be like a spirit or even like a mythological figure.
Oh, by the way, I found the quote. You're right, Neal. It was not talking with you. I believe it was actually talking with my friend Didier, where he mentioned this. It's very interesting. So you don't know about this yet. So in the Quran, 532, it says, "Whoever kills a soul, unless for a soul or for corruption in the land, it is like he had killed all of mankind. And whoever saves one, it is as if he has saved all mankind."
Yeah.
So the original source for this is in the Talmud, where it says in Sahirdan 37a, whoever destroys a single life is considered as if he destroyed the entire world, and whoever saved a single life is considered as if he saved the entire world. So
yeah,
there we go.
Quran is a Quran is like a little mini collage of sources from different parts. Like there was one from the Talmud. Here's one from the Alexander Romance. Here's one from the Christian sources. Here's one from pagan sources, and they're like they're compiling a list of what they think of as sacred literature, and it comes out as like the words that Gabriel gave to Muhammad. But really, we could find them in literature. Like you'd find that in the Talmud. You could find that in the Alexander Romance. It's not really a revelation.
You ever watch Entourage?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, so do you remember the one where I think it might have been Jeremy Piven's character or one of his associates, but they were pitching a fiction movie, and it was and they went into it. They were close to production, money's been invested, and then all of a sudden he falls asleep again in front of the TV, and he wakes up, and this movie, late night movie, is playing. That is the story he was pitching, and he thought it was his own when he pitched it. But he was actually just pitching some late night B movie that he fell asleep to, and he's like, "Oh." And I just
like the
wonder,
Quran, dude.
Yeah, and it could be said even honestly, it could be said about Christ on the cross being almost the same story as Odin.
Yeah. There's a lot. They call it mimesis. Mimesis.
Is that what this phenomenon is called?
And Plato even talks about mimesis happening in literature. And being one of the ways that literature is passed down is through mimesis.
Can you explain that a little?
It's like a sometimes unconscious, but sometimes conscious appropriation of a story to tell a different story. So it doesn't mean Jesus didn't exist or wasn't crucified, but you can tell the story of Jesus being crucified while borrowing motifs and themes from other stories to write the story.
It's not too different from internet memes in a way.
Dune is a mimesis of Star Wars.
Totally.
But it's not copying Star Wars. It's just using a lot of the motifs and imagery and themes to rewrite a new story.
I use Michael Jackson, but
probably is.
Yeah, there we go. Or a Final
example.
Fantasy 12 in the Star Wars. But I want to get back to the initial question of this whole dialogue, which has to do with this connection between Islam and leftism. So we've looked at a few connections already as far as, you know, the dogmatic element. But what about when it comes to the queers for Palestine sort of thing, where you have people, and I can even give you...
Before you even go there, I just want to say something about the Quran itself.
Sure.
Just to set the stage or set
the
tone.
Sure.
There's a very strong emphasis on the freeing of slaves, of conquering kings, and the lowly conquering the highly. Like that's a very it's a very egalitarian worldview. Islam is, just by its nature, by its roots.
I'm still here. I need to get something for this discussion.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. Yeah. So
as I said, like you could find throughout the Quran, like different little aspects of Muhammad making it very clear that he's there to fight for the little guy. He's there to fight against the big guy. The aristocracy needs to fall, which is an idea they definitely adopted from Nestorian Christianity, in my opinion. This idea that like we're here to bring the slaves out of their slavery. We're here to, bring the people who can't fight for themselves. We're going to fight for you. Which is what you find in a lot of these Antifa circles. Islam has that rooted in it early on. That's not like a new thing that Islam adopts later on. That's in Islam from day one.
Well, you were saying originally that Christianity was kind of like the proto-social justice warrior religion.
Yeah.
And would you say that Islam is a continuation of that same idea,
Yes.
albeit a lot more with swords right now?
Yes, absolutely.
There's a quick example I just wanted to give of a experience I had at the Russian-Turkish baths, which is on 10th Street. We definitely got to go when you're back in New York City, Neal, and the same with yourself, Brian. It's on 6th Street and no, it's on 10th Street between 1st Avenue and Avenue A. Anyway, I was there, and in the locker room, there was this bald gay guy who was talking about how much he hates Christianity and his Christian upbringing, and how much he was on the side of Gaza, Palestine and all that stuff. And he considered Christianity to be way worse than Islam. And I just figured that somebody like this guy, he's putting his experiences as being a gay guy who grew up in a Christian household as the same as being a Muslim, where he sees Muslims as also being persecuted, just like he was persecuted, because they're the big other, as
For
it were.
example, in the 4th surah, it says, "O you who have believed, by persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves, your parents, and your relatives, whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both." So it's like this idea that like your own family tradition needs to die. This is the new tradition now. Whether you're poor doesn't matter. Whether you're rich doesn't matter. This is the new way. It's very radical transformation of culture it brings about.
Yeah.
It's a radicalization religion.
And right now we're still in the period of Ramadan, at which people who are both rich and poor have to deprive themselves of eating and drinking for a period of time. So in a way, that is something that, and again, I'm not saying that is something that I actually disagree with. That may be a good practice to be done, because they would say that by doing so, when a poor person comes to beg for food, what it's like to be in that same state as that poor person was. So, I'm not going to rag too much on,
Let me also make it clear, a lot of these sects and traditions of Islam are very, I think, fulfilling. For example, the Sufi sect. I think the Sufi sect has a lot of good things to offer to the world. I would like to see them in charge rather than some of the more, other ones. Yeah. Anyways, what I'm saying is I don't think all Islam is bad. I'm just saying what this is
Our great friend Jason Rezajorjani, I believe in his book Iranian Leviathan, he wrote that the Sufis, if I'm not mistaken, are crypto mytherists.
Yes.
Which again, would you say that's
think
correct?
So. I think Islam itself has a lot of crypto something else in its nature. You know.
Sure. Yeah. But as far as the things that are in crypto, the things that come out onto the surface, like those two young terrorist guys, going back again to that initial question of when you were living in this worst of the worst times, and you see this Muhammad guy and Abu Bakr and all these guys who are offering you, I guess, a more interesting life, because I don't think that a lot of those young guys were scholars by any means. They probably didn't know how to read, didn't know how to write. So how different really is it, the experience that is being had by those two would-be terrorists and others like them versus the experiences of those young guys back in Mecca and Medina?
I think there's something very similar happening psychologically.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you notice that the leaders of many of these liberals, and by the way, people shouldn't confuse the liberals with the left. It's kind of two different things. The left is left would kind of be your more left-leaning kind of orthodoxy, whereas like liberals are more like radicals or fascists are to everything else. And but what I have noticed, and I wasn't alone in this thought process. I was just going to hold up a book in a second that has just really impressed me about this very question. But what I've noticed is throughout history, the upper middle class and the upper class get bored. They get bored, plain and simple. And so you see these guys from Pennsylvania. They're living good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see my own son. He's a good kid. He's 14, but I shoved him into sports and contact sports like football and boxing and stuff like that. So he always has a challenge. He always has a hill to climb. Because what I've noticed is, in some periods of this country, the ultra rich got into witchcraft and conjuring and messed with some pretty dangerous type of esoteric practices. Then you have most of the people you see leading, like Indivisible and some of these groups like DSA and everything, they come from very wealthy backgrounds. And I've seen it myself in my own family, like by marriage, where I asked a young person in my family during the BLM riots, good guy, let me just make that clear, but I said, hey, why are you going to that? And he said, well, because cops are killing black people in record numbers. I said, well, they're not. Here's some statistics. He's like, what's your source? I said, the FBI. But he's going anyways. And so a couple of years later, he admits that was probably not the best thing to go to. And he wasn't involved in he was just holding a sign. He was the day shift. But I asked, I said, well, why were you so eager to go? I mean, that could have been bad for you or some people that, a mob can turn into a violent riot really quickly. And we've seen that happen. He said, why'd you join the army? And I said, that's an interesting question. I said, honestly, I actually had a scholarship to Dartmouth leaving Maine, and I could have jumped right in. It wasn't a full scholarship, but it was good. It was impressive. And I went into the army. I went into language school, but I went into the army. And why did I do that? Because I wanted to do something meaningful, risky, kind of the Joseph Campbellish type of pursuit of like the battle and the hero's journey. Sure. And I think everyone has that in their nature, even women. Even though in the past people have said women don't share that, I think women sometimes share it more. And when that is not exercised in a healthy way, it turns into gangs, it turns into violence, it turns into terrorism. On the other side of that, you have people that know this. Okay, they know it and they know how to manipulate. People that run narco gangs, people that run terrorist groups. A really great example of this for people who haven't dealt with actual terrorist groups like I have, the movie Syriana with George Clooney really outlined the typical radicalization process really well, and I recommend it to everyone. These two young men, now they're not from rich families, they're poor, but they're just frustrated. And it's about frustration, okay, regardless of your level of wealth. And then someone comes along who promises you that they have the answer to that frustration, and it's someone else's fault. That's another key ingredient. We saw this with the Nazis. We saw this with the Bolsheviks. We saw this with every horrible uprising in every situation. And the book I wanted to bring up, and I recommend it to you guys too, is do you guys know Jamie Glazoff? He is he's a podcaster. He's also a great journalist. And as it turns out, one of the best writers and historians I've ever read. And my wife's been on his show often. He's always been very good to her, and always kind of gave her a platform.
And by the way, for people who don't know who your wife is,
Naomi Wolf, and she just really likes this guy and respects him, and so do I. And he has a show called The Glazoff Gang. I didn't know he's a writer, So this book is called United in Hate. I know it's mirrored, but and it is the left's romance with tyranny, terror, and Hamas. And I'll just read the chapter list to you,
Sure.
So you guys have an idea of where he goes with this. Because when I saw it, we get a lot of books sent to us, and I can't always read them all. I have a ton of books about COVID is bad. But so normally, and she's reading this, and she normally will read them because she makes a promise, she keeps it. But this one, she's like, hey, do you have a highlighter? Do you have, and it's all, what do you call that? Earmarks or dog marked and folded and well read, and everything is like, she already and she never defaces books like this, but she was just like, oh my God, did you know? Oh my God, did you know? Like every 10 minutes, and she's normally engrossed in a book. But The Roots of Denial. So part 1 is The Believer. It's based on a book called The True Believer. The Roots of Denial, The Believer's Diagnosis. Part 2, Romance with Tyranny. Worshipping the First Communist Death Cult. The New Left, Renewed Instinct for Destruction. Castro's Slave Camp, Affection for New Killing Fields. In Love with Hanoi's Butchers. Flirting with Mao's Executioners. Nicaragua, The Last Communist Hope. The Death Cult Cousin, Islamism. Yearnings for Death and Suicide. To Hate a Woman. The Seeds of Death. And I'll go on, I won't read them all. Cravings for Death. Loving the Burqa. The Bonds of Jew Hate. Romance with October 7th, Hamas, and Beyond. And Jamie actually his family hails from the Soviet Union, like yours does, Lev. And but I just wanted to read, per that last question, he quotes from Eric Hoffer's True Believer. Have you guys read this?
Yeah, about the Nazi dude.
Yeah, and he says, quote, people, and this is Hoffer, not Jamie, but it says, people with a sense of fulfillment think it is a good world and would like to conserve it as it is, while the frustrated favor radical change. Okay, so people, you'll see when, like, I come from, I've had a couple marriages before this one. And, my first marriage, I was married to a woman who came from the cowboy culture out in, like, the eastern part of California. They had, like, 400 head of cattle as a hobby. Dad worked at Bureau of Land Management as a heavy equipment operator. And I wouldn't say they were poor. They were like middle to upper middle working class, but they worked hard and they were always outside. They did a lot of work with their hands. And these people were always happy. These people were always fulfilled. They still are. And just being in Houston this past week at the major rodeo they have out there, which was awesome.
With Lizzo, by the way.
With Lizzo performing. And my first night I went to, for all those that think, cowboys are racist, I just want to point out that the biggest rodeo in rodeo, besides National Finals Rodeo, is it NFR? NRF. They had like Black Appreciation Night because there's so many black cowboys in Texas. And we're talking some of I think like the, what do they call it? Steer wrestling, which is like the badass sport of rodeo where you jump off a horse and wrestle a steer to the ground. The champion's a black dude, and so I just want to point that out. And Lizzo was the performer, and it's wild. And I was taking pictures of it because I'm up on the kind of nosebleed seats for that one, but you got a sea of cowboy hats in Lizzo.
Nice.
It's wild. But
Oh,
anyways,
yeah.
everyone out there that you talk to, a lot of them, they kind of act like they're living paycheck to paycheck. Like they're winning like $3,000 in an event where you're, riding a horse and, maybe getting punctured with a bullhorn or something. And it's like $3,000. I'm looking at it like $3,000 is not a lot, I mean, but they just, knowing that culture, I know, they do this job, they do that job, but they love being cowboys. Okay. And they love ranching and they love livestock. You don't really make a lot of money on small herds. You tend to lose money. They never let it go. They love it because they're fulfilled. And you can see people in Brooklyn who are like the superintendent of my building. He's definitely not doing as good as, Radical Jihad Joe out at the BLM rally. This dude's always happy. His kids are like well educated. They're very healthy. He's good to go. And it's tough because you're going to find a lot more of that in conservative circles than you are going to in liberal circles. That commitment. And that's why it's frustrating for people like us who are in the, maybe not you guys, but for me and Naomi are very active in the, I wouldn't say political space, but the activism space for conservative issues. And it's frustrating because it's hard to rally people that are fulfilled.
Yeah, that's very. I was thinking about that recently, actually.
Yeah.
Well, Neal,
that's why the left is more. People see the left more as more of a, protesting and getting out there and doing activism more than the right, because they think of it as like the oppressor oppressed dynamic, where the oppressor doesn't have to go out and do anything or have to protest anything.
Right.
But really, there's tons of things people on the right want to protest and want to be active about.
Well, there is a problem there that I want to get into, but before that, Neal, you were saying before about the Christians that there's a similar situation back in the days of the late Roman Empire, where you had a lot of these, very spoiled Christian brats, if you were, who felt a lot of egoism and wanted to embrace something like Christianity. Because they came from this rich family and they didn't really accomplish, anything that heroic themselves. So maybe that was a way that they could, elevate their own soul, so to speak. I don't know. Like, would you say that's accurate?
I think there's some examples of that, like, because I think most of the earliest Christians were from the lower echelons of society. From like the plebs, the freed slaves.
But as far as the people
themselves,
who then helped finance Christianity, who helped spread it out, like that would have come from those people.
They would have been more of like the today's Marxist types, the rebels, the fighting against the system, wanting change, wanting to tear down the Roman Empire, replace it with because back then people thought of Jewish people as they didn't think of them as like wealthy, in control, powerful. They thought of Jewish people as more of like plebeians, like lower than most people. So they you would find people who are the Gentile Christians saying, we need to put the low people up on power, which is like, freed slaves, Egyptians, Syrians, Jewish people, not Romans, not Latins, like the other, that type of dynamic.
Wait, by the way, sorry to interrupt. Did this have anything to do with Caracalla making all of these people in the Roman provinces citizens? It did.
Yes, because before Caracalla in 212 CE, 212 AD, whatever you want to call it, he passed an edict that made everyone a citizen.
Wait, Neal. Before that, Brian was asking who Caracalla is.
It
was a Roman Empire.
It's a good question. It's actually very relative because Caracalla is one of the emperors from the Severan dynasty of the elite Roman Empire. They're emperors, and they were in power between 200 and 220, right around there. Early 3rd century, first quarter of the 3rd century, and Caracalla was part of the Severan dynasty, who issued an edict making every single person in the Roman Empire a citizen. Where before that, you had to be born of a citizens, or you had to live in a senatorial province, which would be like Italy or Greece, and you have to earn your way into something. Maybe you did something heroic in the war. Maybe you wrote a nice epic treatise.
There was kind of like a meritocracy element here.
To get.
I
to
mean,
become
it
a
sounds like
citizen,
very good immigration policy to me.
Yeah, exactly. This is how they thought of things. Like
Right.
it was very hard. It was sacred. To be a citizen was sacred.
Yeah.
And just because you lived in the Roman Empire doesn't mean you were a citizen. You were known as, it's called Peregrini, Peregrini. And in fact, if you look at the first list of popes, 9 out of 10 of the first list of popes are all Peregrini. They're not Roman. They're not citizens. Anyways, when Caracalla from the dynasty of the Severans were pro-Christian, they were the first pro-Christian dynasty. 100 years before Constantine, they minted coins in cities that had high populations of Christianity. They actually minted coins with scenes of the Bible on it because they were trying to be palatable to Christians. And it's during that dynasty where they said, now everyone's a citizen of the Roman Empire. And he did it strategically as a way to sort of unite the empire. He thought this was what happens. Really, it led to economic destruction of the entire empire, which is called the crisis of the 3rd century. It happens right after this edict. So it ended up being a failure. It was a horrible idea. Most historians, even historians on the left, will agree it was a bad idea.
It's pretty funny how history kind of repeats itself, doesn't it, Brian?
It is, and you mentioned, God, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like this fills in so many blanks, and definitely want to get you on one of Naomi's show. I'd say come on my show, but honestly, I'll just be sitting there taking notes like your student. But you mentioned Marx earlier, and if you know, it's so interesting. If you know the biography of Karl Marx, he was an upper middle class brat on a trust fund. He never stepped foot in a factory until after he was trying to sell Marxism. And a lot of people don't realize that. This guy had no idea what a worker was. And you can feel this in today's kind of liberal Marxist leanings, where you have people in the upper middle class, mainly white rich kids from Connecticut, who summer in Connecticut, and live in the city, and they will say things that make no sense. Like, for instance, the entire invention of Latin X or Latinx.
Oh, look, I put flavor X from this kombucha that I'm drinking.
That's funny.
By the way, the guy who did this kombucha, which is called Black Cup Kombucha, I got this at a farmer's market, and he's probably watching the show right now. So, guys, if you go to, I guess, Black Cup Kombucha on Instagram or whatever, you'll find it. And just a shout out to Patrick, the kombucha man. So
Patrick, I love kombucha. So
Flavor X.
I'll check it out.
But
Flavor Latin X.
They do. They apply these labels to people that never asked for them. And there was an article that came out, I think in Forbes, like in 2021, where they said, basically it's dead, Latinx. No one knows what it is. No one wants to use it. And I've actually done the experiment where I go down the street in New York and, guys from Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Dominican that I know, I'm like, hey, man, what do you think of Latinx? They're like, what? What do you think of Latinx? They're like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Brian. I go, Latinx, that's your label. Like, you're Latinx. I don't want to offend you, so I'm going to say you're Latinx from now on. They're like, you're offending me right now. And that's the thing. But they apply these labels, or, for instance, you've seen the video where, the argument of the Schumer army, where they're saying, black people can't get IDs.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah.
And then they have the guy.
What was a big red pill for me? Mm-hmm. Growing up in Western New York, and I live, which is surrounded by a lot of reservations, Native American reservations.
Oh, I know that area well.
Yeah, and the people were big fans of the Redskins. They loved the Redskins. We're not even near Washington D.C. But that's their team. They don't even care about the Buffalo Bills, which is their closest. That's their local team. They don't even care. They're Reds. They love the Redskins. They call themselves Redskins. And then they did 2 polls at these colleges saying, they polled Native American students, asking them, do you want to have us remove the term Redskins and change it? First one came back, 90% said no, we want to keep it. They did another poll. Second poll came back, same results. They just ignored the polls and said it's racist anyway. And then I found out the word Redskin comes from the word Oklahoma. Oklahoma is the Shawnee language. If you in the word Oklahoma in Shawnee language is redskin.
No
it means
kidding.
so the state of Oklahoma is based on the Native American word the place of the Redskins.
That's
so wait,
crazy.
are we going to say that the state Oklahoma is racist now too? So
Wait,
this
is
was
this-
a big red pill for me when I found out the
Well,
Native
a
Americans
redskin pill.
themselves want to keep the name Redskin,
Well,
and it's only white liberals who wanted to get rid of it.
And my point in bringing all this up is, and Lev, I'm not picking on you, but I know you were schooled in New York, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember we were off camera, and what is that thing he has?
I don't no idea.
The hell is that? It's freaking me out. But
Oh, what that? Oh, I just left it there. I don't even know what that is. It's like some doodle that I did.
so we it reminds me of like a happy version of like the baby alien in the Aliens movie. But I recall you saying you were talking with your friends. It was my first show. I didn't know you guys, but I'm just hanging out on the digital backstage, and I believe it was you. You were saying, but how do we get to that guy in Tennessee? The guy whittling on his porch. How do we get them more involved? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, at the time, I thought you were a liberal. You're actually probably the truest centrist I know. If that is how you classify yourself.
I mean, like a classic liberal in terms of how somebody like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson would have been a classic liberal.
Yeah, and I
It's
think
a very
you're true
different
to
kind
that,
of.
and you've definitely have gained my respect over the years. But I heard that, and I said to Naomi, I said, yeah, so I heard them talking, and all I'm thinking is, like, how about you leave them the fuck alone? Like, I'm sorry if I'm going to get you banned from YouTube. But I swear.
No, the F word's fine. Yeah.
And, so let me ask you, like, just why would you be thinking like that? Is that just ingrained? That you have to help people?
You talking about me?
No, to Lev. And I'm
yeah,
getting
Lev.
to something here.
By the way, I just wanted to show people that this is all documented. That these 69%, or hold on, where's the one that I found? 2016, 90% were not bothered by the team's name. Look at 3 sources on that.
Aren't they getting the team name back, I heard? Or they're
I
fighting to
hope
get it
so,
back?
because
Yeah.
nobody wanted to change it. It was only a small amount of college white liberals who decided for everyone else that this name was racist. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure
There we
people
go.
know that I'm not making this up.
Wait, just so I understand the context, Brian, of what you're talking about, because
Right.
my memory's a little bit hazy. What was I referring to when I was talking about this guy?
I have
whittling
no
away?
idea. You had a different crowd back then. You had the guy we were talking about last time that has since
I
left
probably
you.
had a even more right-wing crowd, if I'm being honest. I probably
No,
had.
but you did have
more of
that
a-
guy. Well, let's just say he was a very heavy-set gentleman.
Well, Neal knows who we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
I think you were talking to him. But I
Well,
remember
he's like
hearing
su-
that.
super right-wing and also very anti-Semitic as well.
Like,
but
maybe I was hearing it out of context then, because I honestly thought you were on a crusade.
yeah, I don't know. That may have been out of context. The only I would say like this: the only kind of help would be in terms of making sure that the West does not destroy itself. So that kind
Yeah.
of help in terms of
I probably got
waking
out of
people up,
context.
getting them on the same page.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting people to go out of their way. The people who I think should be the ones that are, much more involved are the people who go to all these Ivy League schools and have positions of power. They're the ones whose brains have been, I think, the most screwed up. And they're doing a disservice to their ancestors, who actually
Yeah.
did focus on, the good, this
Right.
eternal question that was asked by Plato and Aristotle and all these guys.
Yeah, and I think what I'm getting at is it seems like the more, I hate to use the word gentrified or civilized, because I don't think working class are any less or more civilized than the upper middle class, laptop class. But what I will say is it seems like people that have reached a point in their lives where they have too much time on their hands, I call that over civilized. They're beyond the list of Pavlov's needs tree or whatever it is, the basic needs. It's like idle hands are the devil's playground, and I see that we're dealing with a mass case. It's like a massive case of the Messiah complex and gone wrong. Because what I'm getting to is when you see depictions of the Middle East and the people in the Middle East by our legacy media, which is mainly left controlled, it's almost like they still think we're in 1930s Middle East. You know what I mean? And when you see the kids in New York, who are not even Muslims, I would say half of these Muslim candidates are running for city council seats. I looked up their profiles. They were like partying at the sorority just last year. These are not real Muslims. They're cosplaying as Muslims. And
Right.
they want to depict certain areas of the world as a certain level of they need us. So that way they have a cause they can rally for. They're trying to garner sympathy from the masses, and you can't do that. See, that's why the China thing didn't work, or the Asian thing didn't work. Remember, that was the next thing after BLM in about 2021.
Stop Asian hate.
Stop Asian hate. And then someone did the math, and they're like, oh, well, we got two problems. The only people beating up Asians that we're capturing on TV are either, and just based on what I saw on TV, a lot of attacks from black people on Asian people, and a lot of attacks on Asian people from Asian people. And then they realize, oh, they get more acceptance rates into college. They tend to make more money after college. They're doing pretty good. So it couldn't really work out that well. And when you see depictions of the cartels in Mexico, normally you see stuff that's stock footage. The only way we got the new footage of what the cartel looks like, and they look like freaking Delta Force, okay? And they're as well armed as our military, and some of them are trained by ex-military members. But the point is, you don't see journalists amplifying that, where that should be a story. Instead, they're amplifying the guy who's kind of dressed like he's going to the same rodeo as I went to, and oh, he's a cartel guy. It's always the more agrarian or type of, rural-looking dude. No, these dudes are like richer than most of our politicians, and their military is like, honestly, it's like something from Tron almost. And they never amplify that, because then there won't be sympathy should they need it for the cartels. And we're already
no more
sympathy.
noble savage, right? Like, that's the idea. They want to portray them as these noble savages that are abused by the evil United States military industrial complex.
Like, they never talk about like the massive drug trade in the Middle East, especially that was propagated by Syria. And I forgot the name of the drug, but most of those October 7th terrorists, rapist dogs were on, I forgot the name of the pill, but it's like cocaine and amphetamines on steroids. And the Syrian government started mass producing it because they can make money. And that stuff spread throughout the Middle East. And most of the people that did that horrible act of October 7th, those mass murders, rapes, everything like that, I was watching that, and I have a lot of stuff that is not public because I have people I know in special operations still over there, and they shared it with me so I could preserve it. And I'm looking at that, and I've been in battle. I've been in many. I did that for a long time. I'd never seen anything like that. I'd seen similar behavior at raves without the rape and murder, in terms of the affect, kind of out of their head affect. I'd never seen anything like that. And then, but you won't hear about that. And that is public knowledge, because there have to be, like you said, noble savages. And, the point I'm getting at is, like, how do we solve this problem? I don't know, because we promote prosperity in this country. But as we promote prosperity, we're creating, I don't know, maybe we should promote good parenting, because that seems to be the problem.
I don't think that's going to work either, unfortunately, and I'll lay out as to why. But before that, I just want to remind those noble savages putting out these promotional Facebook posts, being very happy about kidnapping these poor Israeli citizens. The person who was liking those posts, as I think we all know, is the wife of Mayor Zohran Mamdani. And right now, there's this big story about it, which again, I don't know like how many people in the press are actually covering and are holding Mamdani's feet to the fire. Him saying, "Oh, she's a private citizen," not saying whether he agrees or disagrees with her views. And also, she's not a private citizen. She's on the cover of magazines. She's a public figure who should be extremely scrutinized. And
we pay for her housing.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this question, I mean, going back to the media of, I'm sure as you guys also know, how much the media has been severely propagandizing, skewing the story of what happened with these two terrorists and this attempt.
I saw it, yeah.
I mean, it's disgusting.
So, and, I wish I had the headlines in front of me, but I pretty much have them memorized. And it's, basically, or even watching the, Commissioner Tish's, the NYPD police commissioner, her press statements. There were two groups. One was having an anti-Muslim protest or anti-Islam protest. One was counter-protest. So she made the first group sound like a bunch of haters. She made the second group seem like they're there to, as the noble savages, basically. And then the part she couldn't really wordsmith was, and then one threw a bomb. I'm like,
which one?
Like, I was trying to put myself in the head of, like, my daughter who doesn't watch a lot of news, and, she's kind of like apolitical on everything, and or like just, one of these cowboys at the, at the rodeo. Which refreshingly, I was talking to this young lady at a hat store, and she didn't know who Mamdani was. I'm like, oh my God, there's still hope for this country. She's like, I don't know who that is, and I don't really care about New York. And I'm like, well, you should, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But the point is, I'm thinking, like, how would someone who, like, wait, the good guys? Wait, who are the good guys? Wait, I'm confused. And I think the message confusion was on purpose. But I mean, look, I get why Mamdani, that guy, would, he's a puppet. I'm sorry, but I've gone through his whole biography. He's just too stupid to have engineered this himself. He was put in that position the same way Biden was put in that position by the same people, to basically manage the destruction of New York City, either for a real estate play, drive down the prices, everyone comes in and scoops it up, or, just so it could be bought out by our foreign enemies, who knows. But he's not a true believing Muslim, and he's certainly not a true believing communist. Obviously, he wouldn't live in Gracie Mansion. But I don't understand why the media, even if they're getting paid, they can't be getting paid so much money that they're going to want to take this to the end, because by now, even my very kind of liberal, God bless her soul, mother-in-law, who I love very much, she will still kind of timidly say, well, I read about it. I'm like, we read about it where? She's like, New York Times. I'm like, Deborah. And she's like, I know, but so people know, they know it's bullshit. Like, and it's like, at what point, I wonder, do they just... I don't know. We should ask you, Neal, because you're definitely the historian extraordinaire, and I mean that sincerely. Has there been something like this in, like, the Roman Empire or other societies? Like, people helping sink their own Titanic?
Yeah. This is what I would describe this as what happened in the 3rd and 4th century.
And please follow that with, did they get out of it, and how did they?
No, it was the Western Roman Empire was destroyed. It never recovered from it. That is just the hard truth of it.
But was it intentional? But was it an intentional destruction?
We talked about the Caracalla's edict. Just making everyone a citizen sounds great on paper. Like a 4-year-old thinks that's a great idea, but it failed.
Wait, but I got to stop you right there, Neal. What you're saying right now is that it was an idea with maybe some noble intentions and it failed, versus it being a plot by China or other entities that intentionally want the West to fail.
Yeah.
So in that case, which one was it?
Well, as time progresses, you start to see, for example, that in 476, a lot of people don't know this, 476 is the famous year that's called the year the empire fell. And the reason why I do air quotes is because nothing really fell in 476 In
That
fact,
was like Adrianople and Alaric, right?
yeah, no, that was actually before this.
Okay.
That was Adrianople was 410, I think it was 410. I think so. Adrianople battle 378. Yeah. But yeah, this is all leading up to 476. All these defeats. Rome is no longer the hegemon. And anyways, but by the time we get to 476, Rome's gone. It's nothing. But there's still a Senate, and there's still a city of Rome. But here's what's so funny about that: Constantinople is now the capital of the Roman Empire, all the way in the east. And when Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople, he made a promise, a decree, that they will never tax the city of Rome, because it's the eternal city. It's the greatest. It's our ancestral city. We'll never tax you. So even though we're moving over here, don't worry. We'll never tax you, and we'll continue to send you wealth, and we'll take care of you. Well, that didn't last more than a few decades. After a few decades, they're already taxing Rome. They need the money. Sorry, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah.
They've forgotten. Total forgotten. But the reason why I'm bringing up 476 is there's all these paintings of the fall of Rome, where you can see like these barbarians with long hair and beards, blonde barbarians from Gaul coming in and sacking and tearing down statues. That's not what happened. What actually happened, if you read the sources, the Senate convened that day. The Senate convened. There was nothing, no destruction. All they did was decide, we're just going to let the Gauls, the Goths, I should say, we're going to let the Goths take over. We're going to let them be the we need some sort of power structure here, because the East has totally forgotten about us.
Whoa.
So what you have is you have a transfer of power to these invading Goths, and now it's the Gothic, Astrogothic Roman Empire.
Yeah, because I know the way that story is told, and I only know the story from one of my favorite books. It talks to the saving of antiquity and ancient scripts and everything. Have you ever read Thomas Cahill's How the Irish Saved Civilization?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read that book yet.
Very good book, very quick read. But they start with Alaric, and wasn't he 476? I think so.
Yeah. He was one of the leading Goths that against but there was a couple of them, yeah.
And the way they tell it is the Visigoths would come every year at the same time when the waters were lowest and they could possibly cross the river, and they call them the Fuzzy Wuzzies, and
he's the one. You're thinking of 410.
410.
Yeah. But yeah, this is all leading up to 476.
And the Romans would go out and pay them off with food and everything, and they'd leave. And then Alaric started leading them, according to this. And not Thomas Cahill, but he's quoting the way it was told over time. And they said, okay, what do you want? We got chickens, beef, everything. And Alaric said, I'm going to make you a deal. He said, we're going to raid your city. We're going to take all the livestock. We're going to kill all the nobles. We're going to rape all the women. And, and that's our deal for you. And the emissaries of Rome said, well, what's that leave us? He said, your lives. So it's a very more romantic telling of it rather than the disintegration warfare against themselves almost that you're talking about.
And then, sure enough, according to a couple of Paul the Deacon's, one of the primary sources that I'm thinking of right now, he said that the Eastern aristocracy that was in Constantinople knew that Alaric was going to sack Rome in 410, and that the Visigoths would come in. They knew all this was going to happen, and they allowed it to happen. They actually were in favor of it happening, because if Rome was powerful, they would have to compete with them.
Sounds
so
like
they
Minnesota.
severed themselves from their own roots, and they just become this new thing in the East. They become this whole new.
It sounds like the way Tim Waltz dealt with Minnesota.
Yeah, and this is why
a
lot of Western historians refuse to call the Eastern Roman Empire the Roman Empire. They call it the Byzantine Empire. It's like it's something different at that point. It's not the same anymore.
Well, and I want to caution. Take this moment to caution a lot of conservatives, and I'm conservative, just so everyone knows. I am MAGA. I've always been a Donald Trump supporter, and I still am a Donald Trump supporter. I think any man that can crawl out of that much debt earlier in his career, that's the guy for me. But you hear this kind of similar rhetoric coming a lot from conservatives saying, oh, that's what you get, New York, for voting him in. First of all, the majority of New Yorkers did not vote him in. I think they only registered like 43% of the votes. And if New York falls, the country falls. If DC falls, the country falls, because it becomes a perforated state. And a perforated state never lasts, as we saw with the Roman Empire, as we can see with, the land of Israel, and being a perforated state is almost impossible to maintain. And when people say that, it's almost like they're going back to this like city-state type of mentality, like, oh, we're Texas, we're our own thing. Oh, we are Kansas, we're our own thing. You liberal states, and it's like, no, we are all connected. We have an interstate system. We share currency and language. If one falls, we all eventually fall. Yes. And I would urge people to definitely go, definitely to your website and your really good channel, your really good show, and study what you're studying if they haven't already. Even me, I studied this stuff in college, but it's been so long. That's why I had so many questions on a notebook. But it reminds you, like, oh crap, this is happening. And I know you got to wrap it up, Lev, but I was hoping Gnostic could just...
I didn't say I was going to wrap it up. When did I say I was going to wrap it up?
I've got to wrap it up because I owe my wife a show, and I'm going to turn on my StreamYard.
I did want to show one thing, though, to you guys real quick, if I could here. So, to the question of Mamdani, because this does relate to the...
He's never going to pronounce that name, but I can't talk because I always call him Eric.
Yeah, that is true.
Would you call him this time Mamdani?
Mamdani, Mad Mommy. Okay, so here is the video that I did with our good friend Jason Johnny, and here is what he has to say about Mamdani as far as, whether he's a Muslim or not, like a true Muslim. Who are the people that are left here in the city? I walk around, this is after the pandemic, and I notice there's so many hijabs everywhere. It's crazy. I don't know where they came from. All of a sudden, I'm walking around, I'm seeing this kid in a stroller being transported by a woman with like a full regalia on. Like she's living in the Middle Ages, just walking around New York City next to these fancy cafes. Like,
Ballerina
what is this? What's going on? You remember her?
It's disgusting. Our city is becoming like London. And we have a proof of concept. Like, really? You want New York to become London? I mean, we can see what happens when a European city becomes a Muslim city, So New York is going the way of London. And Mamdani is a typical, Londonistan-style mayor that, we're going to wind up...
Even though he says that he's liberal, progressive, that he likes trans people, that he likes all of this stuff.
My ass, it's Tahrir. It's Tahrir. Muslims have done this to come to power in various places, including in Iran, when the mullahs and their, guerrilla leftist Islamist, revolutionary associates first challenged the regime of the Shah and promised people freedom and liberation and so on and so forth. They also engaged in all this tahrir of endorsing and embracing supposedly progressive ideas, and then lo and behold they come to power and they impose medieval Islamic Sharia on everybody. I mean, this is what...
So that's what Jason has to say about that. And last part that I just want to show here.
Real quick, I forgot to mention that same dynasty, that Severan dynasty that Caracalla is from, that made everyone... That's the first non-Latin ruling family in Rome ever.
Oh.
So
there's a connection.
Before you have the Severans, it's always a Latin.
Where'd they come from?
They came from the first founding member of the dynasty was half Italian, half Carthaginian, and then he has children with a Syrian woman, and so his children who take over the dynasty are half Syrian, 25% Italian, 25% Carthaginian. So they're no longer even Italians ruling anymore. And it led to a crisis.
The Carthage thing alone in taking over Rome is crazy.
If you would have went back in time to the Punic War,
right,
and told them what's going to happen, they would have lost their minds.
I know that from Sid Meier's Civilization. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a good game. So last part, I just want to show over here, just because I like the little animation.
And
that
by the way,
about the Muslim.
Eric, if you would play mine, I put it in the chat.
Eric?
Oh my my God, this never happened in my life.
No,
I'm actually gonna have stickies all over every
I'm
studio
horrible
that
with
say
names
Lev,
too, man.
Lev, Lev.
I'm horrible with names.
No, you heard the story though, right, Stick? I was business partners with a guy named Eric, who
Yeah.
he doesn't really look like you, Lev, but he has all the same mannerisms,
Interesting.
affect, rhythm of speech, everything. Right. And so anyways.
If you post a link in the private chat to what you would want me to put on the screen, I will 100% do that. Here,
and I'm just telling you what it is so you know what it is. This is when mine is when the left goes too far without any research. Or cultural awareness, but go ahead.
Send it in here, and I will put it in. So just to finish up this and this genetic opportunity, but wait until you see the most beautiful, perfect goat that they're going to create with this technology. Just saying. Anyway.
I don't see it, Lev. I don't need to see it. It would really be horrible for the goat. I mean, this would be a great offense against the goat.
It will be a goat that's going to win multiple beauty contests in Saudi Arabia. They actually have that, by the way. They have beauty contests for goats in some of these places. And they're like weird-looking goats, too. I don't know what's going on with these goats. But anyway. Wait, so have you been to the goat beauty contest, Brian, when you were in Saudi Arabia?
No, but I ate camel.
How was that?
It was good. It was good. It was like turkey.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of turkey meat for one.
I don't know what part of the camel I was eating, but like I literally had nothing to do. And I had to like buy some time because some taxi driver literally tried to kidnap me and take me out to the desert. So I was like, oh, I see some blankets I want. Would you stop here? And I left some money on the seat. And I'm like, I'm out of there, man, because I could hear him in Arabic. And he got all tense when I got in. And I was protecting a CEO of a massive defense company, so they probably knew who I was.
Wow.
No.
Okay. Is this the link over here?
Have you guys seen this? Okay, really quickly. They put... This is in Georgia and is put up by probably white liberals from New York. If you haven't seen this news story, you're going to laugh. This is the funniest thing I've seen.
I just want to make sure that I don't get a copyright strike in terms of the audio.
No, you should be good.
Okay.
Watermelon imagery. At the intersection of Brooklyn Boulevard and North Avenue sits this mural. It's a dark-skinned Palestinian woman holding a slice of watermelon, and the seeds spell Free Palestine. If you don't know what this imagery means to Palestinians and their movement, Dr. Feda Tota with VCU says it goes back to 1967 when Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip and banned the Palestinian flag.
Now, the Palestinian flag has 4 colors: red, white, black, and green, which also happens to be the colors of a slice of a watermelon. So what ends up happening when you ban the flag is that people become creative in finding different ways to express their national identity.
Dr. Tota says watermelons continue to appear in artwork and have been recently popularized globally to signify Palestinian solidarity. It's not about the actual watermelon, but the colors. However, the mural is in a historically black neighborhood undergoing gentrification, and the watermelon imagery hits different.
I was taken aback because of the imagery that it represents. So to me, understanding the history of our people and what happened during the Jim Crow era and how those images were used to demean us and make fun of us and ridicule us and run us out of the business, it really bothered me.
During Jim Crow, racist caricatures of black people eating watermelon were used to undermine successful black farmers who grew watermelons to build wealth.
The history of the watermelon is a positive thing in the black community, but it was used to denigrate other people.
So far, the mural's artist hasn't commented. The building's owner, Teresa Sharp, didn't want to go on camera, but told me she wanted to hold space for Palestinians and raise awareness for their cause. Sharp and the group are now considering a town hall to get the community's input before moving forward. Illa Bryan, 12 on your side.
By the way, there's this...
Isn't that that's
the left eating itself, man.
Talk about out of touch.
Yeah.
Look at this girl with the haircut. I wonder who she is in relation to all this.
There's a Platonic dialogue. I forgot. I can't not for the life of me remember which one it is. But there is the idea is like the only dogma you should have is virtue. And like if you're doing things that are bringing virtue to the world, bringing virtues into the world, you should continue to do it. If it's the opposite, you shouldn't. That's it. That's the only dogma you should hold. And he was like, the reason why is because once you have more than one dogma, eventually those dogmas will collide and you'll be at an impasse. And like, you could see the left having so much dogma in so many different ways, and all of a sudden it's just colliding dogmas.
I mean, you have the left promoting a clearly anti-feminist, to the point of death, religion and rule of law, which blows my mind. You have mentioned Queers for Palestine.
Yeah.
Promoting Hamas, who throws queers in Palestine off of rooftops, and that's documented fact. And they'll be the first to tell you, the Hamas terrorists. Actually, I think they put out a few statements saying they don't represent us, and it's like, so yeah, I guess that's the clash of dogmas. It's like, I mean, talk about intersectionalism gone wrong. Wrong intersections, wrong traffic.
Well, the last thing that I just wanted to share with you guys, because we covered the left, I just want to make sure, I would be remiss if I did not mention the right that we were alluding to earlier, because I want to announce that next Thursday, I am going to have a show with Patrick Casey, who I'm sure some of you guys out there know. He was a figure who was pretty controversial initially. He was in more of like a white identitarian space, and he has apparently changed how he looks at a lot of these things, where he is now more, let's say, a Buchananite type of conservative. And, he doesn't want there to be any white nationalism or exclusion of groups, so long as people are able to conform to the idea of what it means to be like a civilized American. So in that sense, I mean, at least from the things that he is saying right now, if I judge people according to their fruits, his fruits right now seem to be ones that are good. But here he's talking about a lot of the people who may have initially been on his side. And this is a conversation, by the way, Neal, that we've had with Adam Green. It's kind of similar, where people who are on Adam Green's side initially, as soon as Adam started to go against all of these anti-Jewish blood libel, demon things in relation to Jeffrey Epstein, once again dragging the Jewish people into it, he, as much as he is a critic of the Jewish religion, ended up going against that narrative, and for that he was hated. But just initially, I just want to show you guys real quick here what Patrick has to say.
Radical Islam poses a threat to Western.
I was saying your mic you're starting to go in and out, just to like.
Oh, okay.
Civilization. Yet there's a curious effort on the right to downplay that threat. Whether it's Israel-critical conservatives like Tucker Carlson denying that radical Islam is a problem, or Muslim influencers like Sneeko and Andrew Tate who are trying to promote Islam as the antidote to wokeness, it's clear that there's some kind of concerted effort to smuggle Islam into the American right. Make no mistake, this is a recipe for disaster, and that's because Islam poses an existential threat to the West. What a lot of people don't understand is that Islam isn't just a religion, it's a civilization. This means that when you import Muslim immigrants, it isn't the same as importing immigrants from other backgrounds. That's because you're literally importing a foreign civilization. And this isn't anything new. People forget that Islam has been at war with the West basically since the beginning. In the 8th century, the Umayyad dynasty invaded the Iberian Peninsula. They weren't fully kicked out until 1492. Bye-bye. Then you had the Ottomans, who invaded Europe from the 14th century all the way through the 18th century. The Ottomans were also responsible for the Barbary slave trade, which saw anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of Europeans bought and sold as slaves. In a letter discussing diplomacy with the Barbary states, Thomas Jefferson described what he had been told about their justification for attacking Christian ships. He wrote, "They believed it was written in their Quran that all nations not acknowledging their authority were sinners, and that it was their right and duty to make war upon them." So as it turns out, even our founding fathers were aware of the threat that Islam poses to the West. Now, the threat that Islam poses today might be different, but it's no less significant. And in some ways, it's actually worse. These days, the threat we face is conquest through demographic change. You see, Muslims have taken advantage of the left's delusional insistence on diversity and open borders to infiltrate Western societies. Whether it's the mass rape of young white girls as seen in the Rotherham grooming scandal, terrorism, as was the case with the Bataclan massacre, demographic conquest, institutional capture, you cannot in good faith claim that Islam is not an issue. And I'm convinced that those who are saying this have an ulterior motive. Maybe they want to own the Jews or stick it to Israel. Maybe they want to get under Mark Levin's skin. Maybe they think that Islam detracts from some other issue they care about. Or maybe they're just literally getting paid. But opposing the Islamization of the West has nothing to do with Israel or Jews, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, many liberal Jewish organizations have been big promoters of mass Muslim immigration into the West, viewing them as their natural allies in the opposition to, traditional white Christian civilization. But I guess because conservative Jews, too, are concerned about the threat that Islam poses to the West, that I'm supposed to decide that all of a sudden Islam is a good thing, no matter how many times you call me Jewish on Twitter. Not happening. If you enjoyed this video, go to patrickcasey.com, subscribe, watch my podcast, Restoring Order. Thank you.
I will say this, and I watched him today, and I like a lot of things he says, but a couple things. Islam in the Middle East across country borders is not a unifying force. As a matter of fact, Osama bin Laden's own cousin Salim, who was business partners with George Bush, and they invested in Disneyland together, they used to make fun of that branch of the family because they were like the backwards Hicks of the family.
Yeah. There were assassinations, like family members assassinating other family members over like the TV riots that occurred. No, but that's kind of my point.
Things,
like they're not together.
Yeah, they were kind of like, we all have those members of our family that might be distant relatives that are like in the mountains, and they found Jesus, and their kids were all barefoot, and everything. That was like Usama's like immediate family, but the direct, the father's first, his father's first. Kids like Salim and a lot of them, very cosmopolitan. The other thing is, what did he say it there at the end? Is like, oh man, I forgot it too. It was a good point.
Well, the Jewish organizations, there's like the liberal ones who would fund migration, just like the Catholic organizations.
Because they're secular. That's the thing. They're secular, and I hear a lot of like, I feel like the right more than the left is on this point falling into this anti-Semitic trap of saying ends with Stein, must be a Jew, must be Zionist, must be Israel. Okay. Oh, Epstein, he's a Jew. That means all Jews are pedophiles.
I mean, in his own, to be fair to Patrick, in his own way, I think he does end up pushing against that by distinguishing Jews who are conservative, who are American, from the Jews that are a lot more in this woke mentality.
Versus the whole low IQ anti-Semitism.
Well, because when they show those pictures of all these like really Orthodox looking Jews who suppose those hats are like $7,000. But when they show these images of like, and there's always conservatives, they're like, you look at all these Jews that voted for Mamdani, and it's like, okay, first of all, those people never dress like that. Most of them are secular. And they're cosplaying as practicing Jews. And if you look at Jewish Voice for Peace, it says right in the membership details, you don't have to be Jewish to join that organization. And most of them are not. And then the people who are like the figureheads of like Jewish Voice for Peace, which was the big pro-Palestinian, big anti-Israel, big, they tend to forget there was a massacre on October 7th. Well, that was led by Naomi Klein. Not led, but she was a big voice in it. Naomi Klein is an admitted Marxist, and they are atheists by nature. She's also was one of the head guests at, Jody Evans' wedding. So along with Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! So the point I'm making is, I didn't see all of his stuff, but I do hope he mentions the weird frenemies relationship for the last 100 years at least between communism and Islam. And communism always wins, but they always use Islam as their club. Always. They use them in the Middle East, especially in the 70s, because they were easy to spin up against the Jews. Why did the Russians care? Because they want those routes. They want those trade routes. They want that land. They want to dominate the Middle East. They can't do that with Israel there. And if you see a lot of the anti-Semitism, I'll just call it what it is, I'm seeing it come from, like, I'm sorry, but like Alex Jones, who I like.
Sure.
And then I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And, just today I wrote, I was pissed off, man. My friend Emerald Robinson, horrible anti-Semitic posts and Substack. It was disgusting. And, and you see it, and like, I can't speak for her, but I can say this. Every single like conservative, I can totally tie or even have them quoting Max Blumenthal or the American Communist Party, which is founded by Jackson Hinkle and Haz al-Din. Haz al-Din, who came from the Democratic Socialist America, both organizations were funded by the Russians, and it's
There we go.
So there is an unholy alliance. And a warning to all the Muslims that think they're friends, and I'll land the plane here. Remember this, when the Bolsheviks took power and eventually formed the USSR, there were 25,000 mosques in the territory that became the USSR. By 1984, there were 500, and Islam was considered the party of old men because guess what? They banned it from their curriculum. So Muslims, they're using you.
If it goes that way, that's a possibility. It could also go the way of Iran in terms of the sheer birth rates. Because let's face it, a lot of these leftists, unlike the very fertile Russians back during the USSR days, they ain't having a lot of kids. But the last thing I just wanted to show, just to get the context here of Patrick Casey's video, when he was talking about the specific, let's say, left-leaning Jewish interests here, he was putting a picture of this place called the Caysid Dialogue Center. Now, I took a look at what this was real quick over here. Who we are, Caysid is a unique intergovernmental organization through our dual governance structure, council of parties made of states, board of directions, religious leaders. We bring followers of different religious traditions, religious leaders and policymakers, advisory forum. And look over here, it says our member states, Republic of Austria, Kingdom of Spain, I mean, they're in the news right now, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Holy See as a founding observer. So
wait, why are they calling, is Spain technically a kingdom?
I guess, they have a king, they got a princess.
Just like UK,
Yeah, so I wonder what's going on with this globalist organization
I'll tell you
over
one
here.
thing that sticks out at me. After October 7th, it was like March of 2024. Spain all of a sudden recognized Palestine as a state, which surprised the hell out of me. And then it doesn't take me long to tie China to anything, but it just so happens Spain took in tens of billions of dollars from China under the Belt and Road to redo their whole infrastructure 3 weeks before they magically accepted Palestine as a state. Okay? And so that stuck out at me. And it's not even a good title. It's like they're not even trying.
Look at these guys over here. Board of Directors, Reverend Canon Rana Khan, Father Laurent Bassanin, His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel, His Virtue Professor.
This is a bunch of BS, man. Look at this. Like, come on. This is like Chinese stuff, man. Like, you know what they used
His
to do?
Eminence? What the hell is that?
Yeah,
No,
look
His
at this guy,
Eminence
by
is
the way.
that's fair. I mean, that's what they call princes in the Middle East. That's fair. But
And look at this rabbi, by the way. I just want to, sorry to interrupt, but these are the Jews that Patrick Casey was talking about.
Reform Judaism. Like, look, anytime you hear reform, eco, and change, run.
Yeah,
like,
trust me, I know a lot about it.
And I'm talking more to the audience than you guys.
Yeah.
Run away.
Her teachings focus on caring for the vulnerable and supporting social justice to achieve peace. There we go. What more do I need to say?
I am so glad you showed me this, because if you go, okay, I'm not really in that much of a hurry. If you could keep going or indulge me, keep this one up. I can find the tweet for you. It's easy. I just found another organization like this today. So, guys, who is that blonde girl that came out of nowhere? I guess she was a model or something. She's a total racist. She was on Tucker recently. What is her name? She's like Carrie Baller or something like that. You know
I don't know. Search me. I don't know. But
she's like all over. She's trending like, here she is. Carrie Prejean Baller. I'll send you the link. But wait till you see the organization that the rabbi she's propping up, because they all do the same thing. And I thought about that when you put that up. Like, they all do the same thing. Like there's no customer research. You know what I mean? Like, if we put a bunch of religious people from different religions, hands across America, the conservatives will love that.
Look, it's the UN Environmental Program, UN Office of the Special Advisor of the Prevention of Genocide.
Is UNESCO up there?
I haven't seen UNESCO yet, but I can take a look. Oh, look, the Scout movement. The Scouts, they've definitely seen better days. But anyway, yeah, if you send me your link, I will take a look at it. But this is just another one of these. You were mentioning China. Like, you think that China is also playing a pretty big role in a lot of these globalistic endeavors over here. Yeah, I don't know, Neal. What is your thoughts when you're taking a look at this? And this is just like random. I just found this by watching Patrick Casey's video right now.
I don't know what to think about it. It's pretty odd to be honest. It's bizarre.
It's just a weird fake name. Like,
yeah,
this International Dialogue Center? Really? Seriously? I mean, that's like, we were joking during the pandemic when I was like, okay, so I'll give you background on this. So if you go to the thing I'm responding to, I don't know if you could click to the one I'm responding to.
This link?
Scroll up.
Oh, here. Okay, I found it.
So she says, so have you guys seen this girl? They've been propping her out lately, left and right.
Eric Prince follows her, apparently.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a big sign there, because Eric...
So does Emily Eucas, by the way. It's so funny seeing Emily Eucas and Eric Prince
Ian
right
Carroll.
next to each other.
Ian Carroll.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, and our friend JJ. You remember JJ?
Yeah.
JJ.
Who's this person now? What's the deal about this person?
Okay, so go back to the tweet, Eric, because this is directly... Okay, so she says, I know you're busy dropping bombs on the behest of Israel. And by the way, she was on Tucker Carlson yesterday. But here's a message from one of the Jewish rabbis, as opposed to the other religions that have rabbis. I guess you have to spell out that it's a Jewish rabbi, who was denied to speak at the religious liberty hearing on anti-Semitism. Who was denied to speak? Is that okay? Beside the point. I'm sorry. I recommended him, Don Patrick, whatever, and then hit show more.
Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Yep, top. There we go. And she's pushing she's an anti-Zionist, which basically means you want Israel to disappear. So she says, does that make him an anti-Semite according to the Zionist supremacists you're surrounded by? She's talking to Donald Trump. His name is Yakov Shapiro, and he has a message for you. You don't have to listen to the message because it's just garbage.
Yeah.
But when I see this, okay, and I'm pretty, on my own accord, not because my wife's Jewish, I like hanging out with the Chabad people. I like hanging out with all the Jews I met because super nice people. They cook really well. And
they're fun to party with. They get drunk and yeah.
Well, not only that, they love community. Like, they love it. Like, and that's really nice to have. And, so far I haven't seen anyone floating, levitating, or eating babies, much to the disappointment of Candace Owens. But, I can't find anything I don't like about the people I've met. Secular Jews,
maybe it was in the matzahs, Brian. Isn't that the idea that they infuse the matzahs?
Who knows? But
by the way, wouldn't that make the matzahs wet? I'm just saying, just like technically speaking, if you infuse matzahs with blood, then they wouldn't be able to retain their hard structure anymore, right?
Well, the way like the Ryan Mattas and Candace Owens would tear that apart. They'd say, "Yeah, but what happens when you take out the T and the S?"
All right, I'm just confused. Okay, whatever. Anyway,
no, like they'll make anything out of everything.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I wrote, if you want to blow this up so they could read it. I said, "Hey, Miss Moron," and I always use insults, not because I'm a knuckle dragger, just because it gets people's attention.
Oh, I do the same thing. This is how Twitter is, man.
I said, "Hey, Miss Moron, this." I think I had an autocorrect there. This self-hating Jewish so-called rabbi works for and also sits on the board of the International Council of Middle East Studies. This place is so historically pro-Muslim Brotherhood. I shouldn't make fun of her. I've got a bunch of misspellings. And so rabidly anti-Jewish, anti-Israel that even other Middle East-related think tanks call them out on it. Do you anti-Semite racist research anything? This took me 2 minutes to find. The link to this hate think tank is in Yakov Shapiro's profile. And it gets better. Just wait till I do a show or an article about this guy and his colleagues. I'll give you a hint. Ask fake Rabbi Shapiro why his colleague and CEO at ICMES, Norton Mesvinsky, wasn't invited to Chelsea Clinton's wedding. He is her uncle by marriage, after all. And she's supposedly conservative. But the point is, if you go down to the bottom and click on, there we go. Just click on, the ICMES one. I just want to, and then go to the About page on there, just so you can see the organization. It reminds me of your Center for Dialogue. So
here we go, International Council for Middle East Studies.
Yeah, so if you go to the just About Us, you can see it's almost the same format as the one you just showed.
See, officers, board of directors. Yeah, here we go. The thumbnails are a little bit lower quality, though. Why couldn't they find better images, Anyway.
Well, they're either all dead or, I don't know. But the point is, like, it's the same thing. It's like we're bringing the religions together and we're creating a dialogue. When in reality, the dialogue is we need to get rid of Israel.
No, it's a literal dialogue when it comes to their wish for Israel.
Yep, exactly. And this guy, and I just think it's funny that, I mean, look, let's face the facts. The Clintons are not exactly pro any religion. They're opportunists.
Yeah.
But when you're disinvited to Chelsea Clinton's wedding because she thinks you hate Jews too much, you really got a problem. Like,
I mean, let's be fair to the Clintons for a second, which, I know it's kind of, but at least like Haim Saban, he was always a big fan of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton back in the day, and he's like a diehard, like guttural Israel supporter. So I don't know what that tells you as far as the Clintons' relationship.
They're opportunists.
To Israel.
They're opportunists. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, they're opportunists. Like, I'm sure if her wedding was today, he'd be, giving a speech, because that's which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah. I like his beard, by the way, his wizard beard.
I don't know who that guy is.
I don't know.
Like, he's
Don't know.
No? I don't know. There's probably a lot of these kind of people there. But anyway, like you're right. This whole globalist UN China thing, it does not look good. And you are right that the Clintons are opportunists. Last thing, by the way, I just want to say, funny thing I just found out, the day that I was having my show with Jason, I think, a couple of days ago, at the National Arts Club, where we were at, Brian, you remember, with our good friend Vladislav Davidson. Guess who was the guest of honor, who a lot of my friends there at the club took selfies with later. And I'm so pissed off that I wasn't there.
Who?
You know who was? Hillary Clinton. Oh man, I missed such a golden opportunity, man. That would have been so great. National Arts Club. You were there too, Neal. You remember?
When I was there, she was there?
No.
Okay.
This was recent. This was like around a week ago. But it's like, what a missed opportunity, to take a selfie with Hill Dog herself.
She's tiny. She's like really short. I saw her.
So you met her, right?
No, I didn't meet her. My wife used to be Al Gore's.
She worked for Bill Clinton, right?
No, my wife worked for Al Gore during his campaign.
Okay.
Her husband at the time was Bill Clinton's speechwriter. So, all those speeches Bill Clinton gave were, I mean, just so you know, they were still Bill Clinton's words because he would change speeches so much. Like, it would drive the speechwriters crazy. But, he was.
He is a fascinating guy. I was reading a bio of Bill Clinton, his autobiography, where he was writing about his interest in voodoo, which I found to be very interesting. Like, I know that people tend to take a lot of this stuff into these very dark directions, but it does seem to me that somebody like Clinton, regardless of all the stuff around him, he would generally, I think, be an interesting guy to talk
Absolutely. With. I mean, except for I don't want to hang out with a pedophile, but, there's that. But, I mean, if, technically speaking, And look, I can say, we also, I'm not exonerating Clinton at all, but I will say this because I see a lot of this with the Epstein files, for instance. Bill Clinton clearly was a regular. I mean, but I think about my own life and what's online, okay, and things I've been interested in. So you mentioned voodoo. So I remember when I was a kid, long before the internet, or like a teenager, one of the most fascinating, intriguing movies I ever saw was called The Serpent and the Rainbow. Okay, and it's about voodoo practices and zombies and all that. Like and I researched voodooism for, like, if that's what it's called, I checked out every book in the library because I was just so interested in that. And then I had my Buddhism phase, and then I had this phase, and then I had this phase. But if I'm, a politician someday, anyone can pull that stuff and say, look at this. You know, like look at Luigi Mangione, who I still don't think shot Brian Thompson at all. And if people go to my Substack, they could see my very thorough investigation on this, and I think they'll be scratching their heads too. And I'm not a liberal, but I'm an investigator. It just doesn't add up. But Mangione, he left a comment on who was the Unabomber? Was it Ted?
Ted Kaczynski or something?
Ted
Kaczynski. So he gave his book a review and said it was very informative, very plain but praising review. And people were like, oh, look at that. He's on Goodreads and he reviewed Ted Kaczynski's, book. What they failed to mention was so did 37,000 other people. Ted Kaczynski was a brilliant man. You can be brilliant and still be a monster.
True.
Adolf Hitler was a great orator. Doesn't mean I like him, but that was a really good skill set he has.
I mean, intellectually, he was average, I'd say, Hitler, but
definitely average.
You're right about the
things
order.
Are more nuanced than black and white.
But the black and white thing comes from, and I'd recommend people go to Man in America sometime as well. And you guys, Lev, should definitely hook up, you and Seth Holhouse. But, he's a Falun Gong practitioner, and he researched, and he's but he was telling me, and I forgot about this about communism, they intentionally make things black and white. You can't be, if you're this, you can't be this. Two things can't be
that's kind of like Islam in a way.
Yes,
we're talking about.
That's why they marry up so well.
Circling it back to the original conversation over here. Yeah. So the last thing I just want to say about Clinton, because it goes back to the question that I want to leave this conversation. Great conversation, by the way, with everybody. Smash that subscribe button right now. But the question has to do with Clinton being influenced by somebody like Carroll Quigley, who wrote Tragedy and Hope, and he wrote History of the Anglo-American Establishment. I have not read Tragedy and Hope yet, but I did start reading Anglo-American Establishment. And what's interesting for me about that book, like people would look at it and say like, oh, this shows like this grand conspiracy with these British people, for example, Cecil Rhodes and a lot of these aristocrats back in the day. But if you read the will that he wrote when he was, I think, 24 years old, that's how young this guy was, where he was already writing out his will in terms of the amount of things, not only that he accomplished, but the amount of things that he had to accomplish because of who he was, because of the reputation of his family and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? I really think that things of that nature elevate people into higher ideals, sometimes for worse. But in his case, what did he want to do? The opposite of what's going on in England right now. Instead of the Pakistan migrants coming to England, he wanted Englishmen to immigrate all around the world in order to spread...
Cecil Rhodes, right?
Cecil Rhodes, yes. In order to spread civilization. That was his particular aim, and he worked together with a lot of these other rich Englishmen, a lot of whom were connected to the crown, in order to facilitate this transformation of society for the better. And I don't see that as being a negative thing, personally speaking. But now we see somebody like Bill Clinton. Yes. Yeah. Well, we see somebody like Bill Clinton, who could be looked at as, oh, Bubba, like the simple guy from Arkansas, but he was very intelligent. Like if he was someone, exactly. If he was somebody who was learning from Carroll Quigley, because Carroll Quigley was his mentor, then it almost shows this interesting transition that the United States society was in, where you have somebody who isn't aristocratic in terms of how they compose themselves. They have to be more of like, oh, shucks, y'all, more for the people. Yet what's happening inside is a throwback to that more aristocratic time, like Cicero and so on and so forth. But now, I'm sorry, like as much as, we talk about a lot of the things Trump did that were good and all of that, I'm not seeing that same kind of aristocratic quality within the current establishment. I wish it was there. I'm seeing a lot more, let's say...
Do you?
I'm not seeing that much. Like, here's the thing. I'm seeing more, let's say, Middle Eastern decorative qualities as far as how he wants to, decorate the inside of the White House. A lot of gold, a lot of.
But
I'm not
is
necessarily-
that really bad? Because let's not forget, like, the architects of Washington, D.C. built it to impress and to intimidate.
You know what? I would say that the Washington architects built it, just my personal opinion here, Brian, in a much more tasteful way than the gaudiness of the gold patterns that I've seen in the interior of the White House.
Really? Because honestly, I think it's a lot better than the woke Christmas we had a year ago.
Oh, I mean, look, we're not even. That's like
And
comparing.
look, I'm with you. I'm with you. Trump's got this thing for gold. If you've ever seen, Mar-a-Lago, that's a lot of gold.
I just don't think somebody like Trump. I think Trump operates on a more guttural level. I'm not sure if he would be interested in Carol Quigley and things of that nature.
well,
Maybe I'm wrong.
Let
I
me
don't know.
push back though. So I've been
Sure.
to Bedminster and I've stayed there.
Okay.
And I'm not a big architect buff, but my wife is, and she went to Oxford. She actually went at the same time as Bill Clinton, I believe, and on a Rhodes Scholarship. And so she really knows architecture, and I think my wife has incredible taste in architecture. And she from being where she came from, by the time 2023 hits, I think we went there. We were invited there for his private event. She was really impressed with Bedminster. She's like, this is like classic Americana. This is just so true to the land here. Like, this is really amazing. I will say that area of West Palm Beach, that's like kind of everyone. The gold in the White House, I don't know about that, but I will say this, the ballroom, that was actually on the original plans of the White House. A lot of people don't know that. I know the basketball court that Obama did just as much destruction with construction at the time. That wasn't on the plans, and no one complained about the basketball court. That cost the taxpayer $30 million.
Who the hell is using it?
I don't know. I don't think Obama looks like he knows how to play basketball.
I mean, look, Obama's library is absolute trash.
Oh my
If you look at
God.
that thing, I mean, there's
Dude.
no.
Remember the Jawas in Star Wars?
Yes. It
That looks like
that.
one of their vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still gotta say over here, look at this. So this is from the Epstein files. You have Epstein's townhouse. This is a picture, and here is the gold design from within Trump's.
It's a bit provincial. It's a bit provincial. But taste is taste. I will say this though. If you look at who his wife is, okay, and I don't know if you've seen the movie or anything, that woman is the epitome of class. Like, I was listening to people on Spaces talk about watching Melania, and I don't care what the left says. One thing the left can't say is that she's not beautiful, elegant, and classy, because she's the epitome of class. And for him to select her as his wife, because really a guy like that with that kind of money, can get almost anyone he wants. This is a classy chick, and a classy chick like that, especially at this level that she's reached, she could leave him any time. So she's staying with him for a reason. Okay, not just because he's president. She stayed with him through all the shit he went through when it looked like he'd never be president again. I will say this, having met him once, but having seen him in a semi-private setting by semi-private, I mean like a 200-person event that was closed off to the public. The man is nothing but manners and the nicest person I've ever met. Like, he likes everyone. He's really verbose and very, kind of can be very crass, of course, in public.
No, I heard this from many people, by the way. I heard this from Raheem Kassam when I was talking with him.
Yeah.
He was describing how Trump is such a great host to everyone. He makes sure that nobody feels left out who is in the room
He
with him, that
remembers
everybody is.
everyone's name he meets. He knew my name because I was on the guest list. Like, I've never met him. I'm not anyone big, even remotely.
Sure.
And he's like, "Oh yes, Brian and Naomi Wolf. Yes, I know you."
But in terms of like that is something that almost seems to be a skill that you would hone, much like you would hone a fine Japanese blade. But as far as
it's
something
good leadership
like
is what it is.
Sure, but it's something like comparing, I don't know, let's say to Cicero. So Neal, I would love to get your take, and we're going to finish up real soon.
And then I'll stop talking.
No. I want to get your take on this, Neal, because you've studied a lot of these aristocratic, Romans back in the day, and I could be completely wrong on my estimation here. I just see, people like Kid Rock, who, maybe Kid Rock's a great guy, I don't know, but this particular culture seems very much like in that movie Idiocracy, where you have like the pro wrestler president of the United States. It just seems very gaudy and tacky to me. And then I look back at the old Roman Republic and see all of these great people dressed up in these togas, and they're talking about all of these advanced things that are related to philosophy. I'm like, we're not there. I want us to be there, and we're not there. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Trump administration people do have those qualities, and I'm just blinded by all the glitter, bread, and circus stuff to notice that. So I don't know, Neal. What do you think? From what you've observed, at least.
I mean, I agree with what
the
you're saying.
quality of the people within the Trump administration, just like the leadership class that we're seeing right now. Would you be able to make any comparison to the people you've studied in the Roman Republic, like the Ciceros and Cato the Elder and people of that nature, as far as what qualities that these people possess? And also what quality, I guess, the Founding Fathers also possess, because that quality is something that they looked up to as far as these ancient Roman people go, right? So what kind of quality was that, and do we see that quality in our leadership today, at least as it pertains to the Trump administration?
He reminds me of a lot of people from the Roman Republic days. It was a time where people were trying to vie for power, trying to gain control of military, trying to gain control of the economy, trying to gain control of religious affairs. Trump fits right in. So, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, to rephrase it, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm thinking of people like Sulla, maybe, right?
Yeah.
To rephrase it, though, we still had people, regardless of all of this, regardless of all of this vying for power and the brutality that came with it, which I don't think we're seeing that level of today even. Regardless of that, though, we still had learned men in the Roman Republic whose rhetoric was of an extremely high quality. The things
Not
that
always.
That's true. Not always.
Not always. Okay, so are you saying then that the people that we have left over
you're kind of giving an impression that the ancient world was perfect and everyone was super educated and
no. I'm not saying everyone. I'm saying the particular people that we remember right now, like Cicero, for instance. Was he a rarity then? Is that what you're saying? That we are only getting the best of the best from the people that existed there?
Yes, Cicero was a rarity. Cicero was one of the greatest minds that ever lived. There's nothing. There wasn't two Ciceros at the same time. Cicero is definitely a rarity.
Or like Marcus Aurelius.
These are rarities. These are rarities.
Yeah.
I mean, they do represent a sort of time period of people like him that were around, and some of his, some of the other authors that we find in that period can be similar in different ways, and sure, but it's just like Brian pointed out, not everybody was like this perfect wise sage floating on a cloud back in the ancient world.
Caligula, Commodus, Nero.
Sure,
we can point to people who were silly back then and laugh at them,
and maniacally deadly.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
They had vomitoriums.
I think the world today is just like the world back then. You have very
that wasn't for
people.
vomiting, by the way. That was just an exit. From what I understand, it wasn't actually for vomiting. It was just the word for where people exit out of the theater.
The word for exit was the same word as
vomitorium. Exactly, yeah.
I'm actually bullshitting. I don't know if that's true. I did 4 years of Latin, but I would imagine that.
I know in Greek it's exodos. I'm more familiar with that, but
the word for vomit?
No, just for exit.
What's the word for vomit?
In Greek?
In Latin.
The word for I think it would be I don't know what it would be. Vomit. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, anyway, I guess what this leaves me, at least the impression that all of this leaves me with, is that the Founding Fathers generation, at least, that one seemed to be a little bit more on the ball. If you're talking about like the aggregate,
okay, I'm jumping in.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, Andrew Jackson, one of my favorite presidents.
Sure.
Okay, walked around with a bullet in his chest most of his life and opened up the White House to everyone, and it almost burned down. He made deals. Seriously, that's when they're like, maybe that's not a good idea, And he won the Battle of New Orleans by enlisting freaking pirates, And I always kind of relate Jackson to very Trumpish type character, but I think you have to look at the context. Okay, Neal said it earlier. Really, Rome's cancer was a disintegration of nationalistic pride. Okay, and we saw that with these. I forgot the name of the emperor that opened a civilization. Caracalla.
Caracalla.
And then we saw what I never pronounced it right, but like the Federate, is that?
Yeah, Federate, yeah.
Okay, that's when they were enlisting the captured territories into their ranks, and they eventually took over the army. When I think, as a leader of a nation, when you get away from nationalism, the nation eventually falls. And when nationalism becomes a bad word, as we've seen it become over the last 10, 15 years, we see the nation start to disintegrate. So let's say Donald Trump doesn't, create something like stoicism like Marcus Aurelius did. What he has brought back to this country is a sense of nationalistic pride. Okay, and nationalism and pride in your country, pride in your home keeps it together. Pride in your marriage keeps it together. Pride in your kids makes you raise good kids. Pride in your country keeps your country solid if it's done at a mass level. And I'd also want to add to that, Lev, and I hear what you're saying, because the problem Trump has always is you have to appeal to your base, and you have to appeal to the masses. I think Trump knows people probably better than his advisors do. Let's not forget, he was a hands-on guy. I mean, he's down there in the suit and the wingtips, but he's going down to a lot of construction sites. I remember those times in New York when, there's always a picture of Trump in a hard hat or something like that. So he's probably more in touch with the American people than, say, like the former recently fired Kristi Noem is. But I see the problem that Trump has is he's got, and I think every great leader has this problem, every powerful leader has this, he's surrounded by opportunists. He's surrounded by people who have their vision of America. So he has some people saying, hey, America's just Joe Sixpack, or America's just this. And I think Trump understands that America's many different things. It's chaos in terms of there is no quintessential American. I think he gets that, but the problem is there's so many people who speak for Trump, whether Trump wants them to or not, that we get this impression of Trump that's really different from who he is. And I think that's why he doesn't respond to media. That's why he doesn't make policy decisions based on polls, because he's like, okay, we need a strong military. We need to do this. We need to do this. And he also understands that, all right, didn't go that way, didn't go the way I wanted to, that's fine. But I think if we look at what makes a nation strong, economics, military might, and borders. Okay, that's it. Like, if you can nail those things down, everything else will come together. And I think he gets that. But the problem is he has people like, I'll just say his name, Jack Posobiec, who's speaking as if he's speaking for Trump. And he's saying stupid things like white Christian nation.
He's a big Duganist as well, Jack Posobiec, and I think it's because of his Russian wife. When I met Jack Posobiec one time at this event in New York City,
he told me about this.
Yeah, he told me that, well, it was the Ukrainians, the ones that were the slaves, which was ridiculous. The Ukrainians were the ones that were actually the free people in comparison to the Russians who were under the Mongol horde. But anyway, like Brian, I completely see what you're getting at here. The one pushback that I would give is that not so much about Trump, but in terms of the elites, the people who are around Trump, the people who are also around, Joe Biden and like a lot of these politicians. I don't think that we're at the same level of quality as we were, maybe even like 100 years ago, when it comes to what these elites were supposed to learn in school, not this commie bullshit, number one. And number two, what responsibility they saw that they had to the rest of society. I don't know if we're at that level.
I think a man that almost had his head taken off by a bullet, has had multiple assassination attempts, has had 37 criminal charges with no actual criminal crime committed. I mean, this man doesn't have to be president. He doesn't have to be at all. He never.
I'm not talking about Trump, though. Like I said before.
The level of people. I hear.
Yeah, you're responding to me about Donald Trump. I said
hear what you're saying.
Not Donald Trump.
The people in general.
Yeah, the people who are around him. Because here's why. One quality that I see with this lessening of, and I was asking like this guy I know whose father owns like a really, really big sports team. I asked him, like, are there any people who are around you who are interested in political philosophy, how the world works and shaping it for the better? And he said, no, everybody's just interested in making money. And so I don't think it was always like that. I could be wrong. But again, in terms of relativity, because you could always point out an Andrew Jackson here, you could always point out different people who are rabble rousers and did a lot of crazy shit.
I hear you, but Andrew Jackson was also, I mean, it's a capitalist system.
Sure,
so if you're not interested in money, you're kind of going against the system. Andrew Jackson, as much as I like him, he did some terrible things to the Native Americans to clear land for oil and beef barons. Okay, but I guess the point I'm making is I hear what you're saying, but I think you have to ask yourself, how do you define?
I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how.
That elite type of
the thing that I'm the most concerned about, not about Trump. The thing that I'm the most concerned about is that the people who are around Trump grew up in such a way, just my assessment, it doesn't just limit itself to Trump, any politician, but the people that are going to be around the politician are usually going to be concerned about keeping their job, and they're not going to counter whatever is being said. They're going to be yes men. They're going to agree with whatever it is that's going on. And eventually, no matter how good of a politician you have, it's going to create an Ouroboros. It's going to create a snake.
I think that's the history of leaders, man. I mean, don't forget that Caesar was stabbed to death by his own Senate. I mean,
sure.
I mean, I'm going to turn the mic over to Gnostic here. I mean, isn't that always the thing with great leaders? You're always surrounded by parasites.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it becomes like a game in itself to be as close as possible to whoever this powerful person is. For example, Caesar Augustus, and one of the great examples is when he started getting towards the end of his life, he's looking for an heir, and next thing you know, his heirs are dropping dead until he finally has to decide on someone he never even really wanted to be his heir, which was Tiberius. And like a lot of historians looking at this, like, were these people poisoned? What was going on? Like,
yeah,
that can be like that, you know?
I mean, look at, by the way, the last thing I want to say about Baron Trump and about Melania. To me, Melania, Melania, his mom, to me represents Olympias, who was the mother of Alexander the Great. And maybe if history rhymes in a certain way, you know, we may be seeing something with Baron Trump and the next years to see what happens. But again, like, that's actually a great example because somebody like Alexander the Great had Aristotle as his teacher. And I think something like that did matter. I think something like that did change the world as far as the spread of Hellenism goes. I don't think you would have had Hellenism if you didn't have Aristotle. So that kind of goes to my point of how important it is to train these elites into seeing something more than just,
I hear you, but I mean, he does have people like that around him. They're just not in the limelight. I would argue in economics that would be Scott Bessent, even though a lot of people don't like him. He's an incredible economist.
I heard good things about him. Yeah,
he's very good. And there's lots of people he has around him, but they're not well-known people, but they're very learned people, but they're also very selfless, and I'm not like being a Trump cheerleader here. I'm just saying from the people I've met, and even Clinton had some good people around him. Even Obama had some good people around him. But unfortunately, I think, and Neal could probably either stop me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like the good people in general that get close to power are so rare, they eventually get taken out by the bad people.
That seems to be very common in history.
Yeah.
And you can see a will to power being very strong amongst the Machiavellian types, unfortunately, more than the good. A lot of times people who are virtuous and good tend to not have as much drive for power as other people are.
Yes.
So there's just that nature in itself, knowing that. It's almost like the cards are stacked in a way where these things just happen.
I mean, read Machiavelli the Prince if you haven't already. It's like, that is a heartless read, and one of my favorites. Or The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Yeah, well, good book. Yeah.
I love all
or the Machiavellians, the Defenders of Freedom. That's another.
I haven't read that. I'll read that for sure.
Yeah, that's another. I believe it was James Bertram who wrote that book, if I'm not mistaken.
But I think to get to power, like, I saw this in the military, and I saw this in corporate America when I left the military. middle management are always the problem in the things you're talking about. It's never the top dog. The generals were always awesome. Like, I got to drive a few of them. I would volunteer to drive them because I wanted to be around them. It was always the lieutenant colonels and the majors I couldn't freaking stand. You know, and I always go back to, there was an old commercial, I don't know if you guys remember it, but they were talking about getting, I think it was a Hot Jobs or Monster commercial, but they had all these little kids, they're like, I want to be a yes man, yes sir, yes ma'am. And then if this one kid that says, I want to claw my way up to middle management. And I think what you're seeing a lot of, like, I'll find it for you, but is, you know, there's always always around every, like, at every level. Look at you know, like in the Elizabethan court, you know, it's like they would make an art out of it. So I think what Neal said talks to it. But I will say this, though. One thing that even Naomi commented on, and she, trust me, when we went to Bedminster, she's like, I can't believe I'm going to Bedminster. I mean, she's a lifelong liberal, you know, up until the last few years. And she's not really conservative either. She just, as people say, the party moved. She didn't.
Sure.
But she's a constitutionalist and nationalist and believes in sovereignty and always has, and believes in good things and, you know, doing the best you can for people. And the thing is, like, you know, I think what happens is we have to look at, okay, well, what is being an American leader mean? Okay, because one thing Trump understands is how to get a message out. Okay, and he understands that just like Twitter, like, if you make the message way too, you know, it's like trapped in time, man.
It's very nice looking.
I took pictures while I was there, even though I wasn't supposed to. But the thing is, one thing that Trump does do, that one thing I think he's really, really perfected, is he knows he can read an audience and he can adjust to the audience really well. And so far, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, he didn't deliver and everything. And it's like, I do see a lot of that as foreign influence propaganda, because let's not forget, it's been just over a year and look what he's done, you know, and that's what people have to remember. And it's like moving a ship. I mean, look at the damage he went into. We had to look up to see bottom when he went into the White House the way Biden left it. So, you know, we'll see what comes out of it. But I'll end with this, and I always say this to people. I'm like, what are you looking for in a president? Because I think it was Voltaire that said, remember, perfect is the enemy of good.
No, that is a very good saying. The only thing that I'd say is I want to look through the periods that we've been through and see, is everything always going to be equal, or are there certain periods where we can say, you know what, these people, at least like a good percentage of the elites, were better, and this is why they were better? Because that at least gives us something to look at as an example of what we should encourage.
I think you should look at yourself and always make yourself better. That's the only thing you can control. And if
you should start at least, at the very least.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson said, whether you like him or hate him, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Make your own bed first, you know, and that's the thing. You know, I think the problem our country has right now is definitely social media. I think is a major problem because it's distracting. I'll admit it, I was late getting on because I got caught up in that tweet that you just read of mine. And that does nothing for me to give me a topic, but it's also, it really stimulates the adrenaline in you. It stimulates those shortwave emotions like hate and rage and jealousy and envy. And those things are very dangerous. It doesn't stimulate, like you said, deep thought, philosophical thought, real, like I love listening to Marcus Aurelius meditations. They're wonderful. I love being in the country and not having a signal, because then I can think. And, I think we need to get back to that, because I think if that becomes the culture once again, like in these other periods, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have half of my life. I'm Gen X. I'm very fortunate that I can remember a time when I'd send letters in 7th grade to a girl I liked, and I'd have to wait 6 days for a response. It was wonderful. I didn't think so at the time, but we just need to shut off the noise to really find the voice inside of us that might be trying to make us all elites, at least onto ourselves.
That is a very beautiful way of phrasing it, Brian. I really appreciate it, brother. And
You inspired me, Lev.
Thank you. There we go. And Neal, by the way, wasn't Marcus Aurelius high all the time? Wasn't he like doing drugs, or is that somebody?
He was taking Theriac, which is a potion that was made, that was put together by his famous doctor Galen, whose medical books stayed the standard text for medical text all the way up until the 16th century. Wow. That's how far ahead of his time he was. And it's another argument for the Dark Ages. Nobody updated Galen. What the hell? Anyways, Galen put together this potion called the Theriac, and it's a combination of different herbs and spices and poppy, a little bit of poppy in there, which is like opium, a little bit. And yeah, he was on it. He was medicated, which could help for a stoic. If you want to be stoic, you can be on medication that'll help you out.
There was a good article in GQ like back in the 90s, and I read it, and I kept this somewhere, but it was called The Good Life. And they had all these different little things you could change in your day to make the good life. You don't need money, you don't need anything. Wake up half an hour early to make a cappuccino instead of a coffee. Own one good pair of custom Italian shoes. And then they had, and it was different writers, but they had one where they said, at least once a year, get drunk on port, smoking Macanudos with a good friend.
Nice. And give that release, and I think you're probably right.
But one of the things he said in that, and I was thinking about Aurelius, he's like, the problem with this plan, he said, you come up with the deepest philosophies, and you solve all the problems in the world, and you write them down. The only problem is the next morning you can't remember them, and you can't read your own writing.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Well, now we have AI to help us out.
Nero had some from his physician Andromachus. And let me just make sure Marcus, yeah, there it is. Romana took it on a regular basis.
There we go.
Galen, there's Galen right there.
Galen.
So yeah, it's documented in the primary sources.
Yeah, there we go.
People debate how much she was taken, how
I
much
mean,
it
personally,
them.
I don't care. Like, it's like, it's...
No, it doesn't matter. People take things.
Yeah.
The substances are part of our lives. Coffee is a substance.
I mean, look at some of our greatest works come from Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
I have
no problem with it.
Brian, weren't you taking methylene blue, or is there a different reason why your tongue had that color?
No, I did. I bought a bottle.
There we go.
I bought a bottle to try it. Honestly, I think it might be a scam because I don't feel any different after like 7 days, except for my blue tongue.
See, I noticed it.
That's so funny. At least while it was on the other day, I took it and it splashed on my teeth.
Yeah, it does make your teeth blue. And also, by the way,
I was ordering a coffee and the guy kept looking down and trying to like not to say anything. I'm like, bro, what is going on? He goes, your teeth are blue. And I was like, oh man.
Also, it makes you pee blue as well. And then it makes you pee green.
Worse,
Isn't that
I forgot I took it and it came out green.
Really?
Well, it's green
when it. Because I was taking a few. I have some actually, and I'll put it in my drink once in a while. But I don't.
Does it work for you, Neal?
I guess. I mean, I think.
You notice any kind of change?
Maybe.
What are we supposed to get out of it, Neal?
What I think it's supposed to enhance like your energy levels or something.
No, we got to take super male vitality for that. You remember that super male vitality in Infowars? Back in the day. Yeah. By the way, Alex Jones
stuff. Isn't he selling the same stuff?
Rush? No, it's not methylene blue, but he does sell methylene blue as well. But last thing I just want to say, Alex Jones's producer Daria, Russian, allegedly she works for the Kremlin. There you go. She was.
Did you see that I posted that Alex Jones spoke at Moscow 2050 just in October?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well,
alongside
there we go.
Jackson Hinkle, George Galloway, all the. Yeah.
It's a real shame to see our good water filter merchant going down this road. I used to really enjoy him back in the day on Joe Rogan's show, talking about the big enchilada mysteries of the universe, like all that stuff. This is the reason why I really got into Neal, for instance, because Neal, you're able to take a lot of this stuff and break it down. And same thing with Jason Giorgiani. So like my intro to all of that was somebody like Jones, but then he takes a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and then he just goes off the deep end. But anyway, guys, Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's do the promotions. Brian, please tell us what you're working on right now, and your company specifically right now.
So the biggest thing
on?
we're doing right now is go to consumerdiligence.org or at consumerdd. What we're doing is we are actually looking into the methylene blue companies, things like All Family Pharma. Don't recommend it. And we do due diligence. It's kind of like Consumer Reports on steroids, but we do M&A level due diligence, or mergers and acquisitions, which I was trained to do. And everything we find, good and bad, we put it out there so you know who you're dealing with. And as you saw it, Lev, I like the CEO of All Family Pharma had a rap sheet longer than like my apartment. And so and they threatened to sue us, but we're just, and we're not targeting left or right companies. It's just, if we see a company, we got Dollar General, we've got some Elon Musk. Yeah. Right there down in the bottom right. And what's amazing about this one got our attention because I'm like, why are so many big MAGA names attached in their name here? And it's not just him, it's his brother, it's his mother. Like, who are these people? Where'd they come from? The doctor is the prescribing doctor of this company is currently under investigation for Medicare fraud. It blows my mind. And then one of our investigators did a great expose on Dollar General. And so the way we do it, it's like people send in leads, or we will just simply, like the Dollar General one of our writers was in Dollar General, and she got up to the cash register and she's like, hey, wait a minute. It's like 25% higher than I calculated in my head. Well, they're adding to the price at the cash register that's not on the shelf, and most people don't notice it, and they made millions this way. And then we also, right now, actually, I'm working on Everlywell. You may have seen their commercials on Fox back in the day, if you ever watch that. But Everlywell is a company that's supposed to give you the status of your organs, the health of your organs, let you know what food you have sensitivity to. Well, it just turns out, to me, it kind of looks like an online catalog for healthy human organs, and the chief medical officer happens to be buddies with Charles Lieber, who was arrested from Harvard for selling secrets to the Chinese. And the doctor who helped form Everlywell also was is an honorary professor at Wuhan Institute of Virology, and is the leader of the European Organ Council for organ transplants. My theory of the case that I'm pursuing right now is, could this potentially be used to identify healthy potential organ donors, probably unwitting organ donors who maybe will just disappear because this app is tracking them and they're paying to give updates to this app of all their organs. They even have a gross little cartoon of how to give your blood, and they try to make they give the blood drop little eyes and a smile. It's like, hey, I'm your blood. It's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. So we look at things like that. And then finally, I'll just say this. Lev, got to get you on my show so you could tell more people about what you're doing. I love what you're doing. You're bringing a lot of different voices together. And, Neal, you, of course, I could listen to you for hours. I learned so much tonight, and would love to have you on as well, because I'm always trying to connect what happened with history with what's happening now, because I don't think it rhymes. I think it definitely repeats itself. So that's where we're at. And then my Twitter is right there. Love me, hate me, but always share me.
And Neal, how much would you say is the amount of hours, maybe even in days or weeks or months, of the total accumulation of your videos so far? If you can guess. Yeah, if you can do like
content?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be hours, it would be like days and weeks and months probably, right? Like
time. I have one video that's 4 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow. Well, what is that one about?
About Roman religion.
There we go.
Hey, do you want to come on my show right after this? Because I owe my wife an episode. I love the long stream.
Right after this?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna eat dinner and stuff like that, but I'm definitely down to come on soon.
Let's do it tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
I do anytime. What I'll do is when I do
let's link up after this, and I could do it soon in a couple days for sure.
Yeah, your show's awesome, and I love doing that too. I did a
let's do it.
I did a 6.5 hour live stream the other night.
I'm definitely not. Yeah, I already went live at Kurt Metzger right before this, so I'm kind of.
Yeah, I got
streamed
you.
out.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
let's do one soon. Tomorrow, maybe, possibly tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, tomorrow, the next, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, let me
definitely.
link up with you right after this.
By the way, everyone, I recommend Lev's too, and I always have.
Yeah.
These two guys, very interesting, and I found you when you did that interview with Adam. Was that his name?
Adam Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I found you all interesting. I found what Lev was saying was interesting, and I told Lev the next day, I said, honestly, I think you just need to do one with Gnostic and one with Adam, and because they're all so interesting, and I want to hear them all.
Well, this is what I'm going to be doing with Patrick Casey. So next Thursday, guys, be on the lookout. I'm going to have a show with Patrick Casey, live episode, so that's going to be really good. And by the way, Kurt Metzger, you mentioned, I found out when I had Kurt Metzger on, you know what a good friend of Kurt's is, Neal? Max Blumenthal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind
That's
of
a
a
lot of
shame
people's
because...
reactions to Max. That's a lot of people's reactions to
Yeah.
He's the worst. He's not even like the worst. It's not even
this.
like
I think he's paid by people to just kind
I
of push.
I think he's a message mercenary. Like I can't connect him to. Yeah, I could connect him to Russia. I can connect him to China.
Yeah.
But there's too many. But like, I think he's just like boom. He's just goes, and it's not really his fault. He's doing his thing. You know, if you're stupid enough to believe it, that's on you.
Yeah.
But what?
Or in the trance, because I would say somebody like Metzger, who's a really, really funny comic, he is somebody who is more of like not even being fully aware of what's going on, maybe in terms of the internalities, but he's just very guttural in how he expresses himself and how he
I'm
makes.
looking forward to that. Yeah, I'll watch that.
Yeah, it was an interesting episode. I was pointing out all the Russian influences on Joe Rogan.
But Blumenthal, I see him all over Rumble, and you know how they get in?
Yeah.
They all got in under COVID, so they were all at the defeat the mandates. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people on our side of the aisle that are kind of new to this whole media thing, so they don't do due diligence on their guests. And I've got these dudes with their, they're like Joe American. They're like, I got Max Blumenthal. He's really smart, And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason he's really smart, dude. And then you see them get confused when he starts veering towards kind of like almost like Lenin Stalinism, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, look, that's interesting, But if you watch Blumenthal, George Galloway, Kim Iverson, Jimmy Dore, and Judge Napolitano, they all circulate on each other's platforms, and they all have the same exact message.
And they were also given the award, right? Some of them were given that
Sheila
award. you
Shannon-
mentioned.
Sometimes word for word they say the same things.
Yeah, well, they all originally received money from the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party, which was was eclipsed by the Socialist Ba'ath Party in Syria, and it is run through the. Ironically, it is run through the. It's the acronyms that they run the money through. The NGO in San Francisco is actually the acronym is AIPAC, but they're Syrian socialists. I'm like, that's so funny. But Gray Zone, all of them, you can see it. It's just. And I just wish that's why my show's called Investigate Everything. It's not that I investigate everything. I want everyone to investigate everything, so they don't have Max Blumenthal, influencing conservatives. He's as anti-American as they come.
Well, guys, with that, I want to thank you so much for watching. Be sure to smash the subscribe button, smash the like button, click the bell, patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron today, and $20 patrons get to be in New York City for live recordings. We have wonderful guests there. We had the most recent one, Dr. Jason Rezajurjani. He was there in person talking about Iran. Wonderful episode. And we then went to a local izakaya because the weather was kind of cold. When the weather is nice, I have a nice rooftop in that condo, so you guys are welcome to come on the rooftop and we'll hang out. Izakaya, it's like a Japanese bar with food and sake and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, guys, Neal, thank you so much. Brian, thank you so much. It's a fantastic conversation. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Patrick Casey coming up, and have a wonderful rest of your week, everybody.
Have a great one, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.